Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whichever the case may be. For all of you listening out there across the crazy planet Earth, welcome to Vestiges After Dark. And I am your host, Bishop Bryan Willett, coming to you live from the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains on this March 22nd, 2022. Tonight we talk about divination, particularly psychic ability and the use of the tarot. We have a fantastic brand new guest to join us this evening, Reverend Corbie Mitleid, to discuss her expertise in this arena. It's going to be a fantastic show as we break down some of the misconceptions, the common misconceptions of divination, of going for a psychic reading, as well as many other things. You don't want to miss this one. Don't go away. Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's edition of Vestiges After Dark. I'm very excited to be with you this evening. I know that there's a lot of bad weather out there in the country, and some of it's heading this way overnight, but I know that a lot of the South Midwest area is being hit hard, and I know a lot of our listeners are out there, so we are praying for you, and we are putting good thoughts out there, so hopefully everyone stays safe. And if you still have power and internet, we hope you're tuning in tonight because we love it when we have a nice full audience to enjoy the conversation together. And we've got a great show, but before we get to that, first I'd like to talk about the questions and comments from the ether. I'm changing the name of that segment. It used to be questions from the ether. Now I'm going to say questions and comments from the ether, because a lot of the things that get sent to me are actually comments and not really questions. And it seems to be more appropriate to be able to expand the range of feedback that we get. And a lot of the feedback was from last night's show. Now, last week's show. And last week's show was extremely controversial. I realized that. I know that, anytime you start talking about things that upset people or have the potential to upset people, you're going to get a lot of interesting feedback from both sides of the coin. Now, I want to say most of the feedback was fantastic. I'm just looking at the Nicolaid network, and I'm seeing comments from members saying, thank you so much again for making an episode of this. It was absolutely fantastic. I loved it. So much to think about. Now I know why. When I discovered meditation around my preteen years, I wanted often to do it naked. It was an instinctual thing, and I felt inhibited by the clothing. And that's a lot of what we talked about last week, about how clothing cuts off one of our primary sensory connections to the spiritual world. And I am one that feels that the spiritual world resonates through the physical. They are just two sides of the same coin. And if you cut off one part of your receptive system, you're going to inhibit the process that allows you to fully connect, which is why, as we mentioned last week, skyclad is an important part of pagan and neo-pagan ritual practice. Witches have been doing it since the beginning of time. Also got other comments. Really enjoy this episode. Always learning and growing because of you all. This is one of my favorite topics on vestiges. Very thought-provoking and interesting. Thank you. Great show, insightful and fun. Thank you. So, I mean, obviously the feedback was, I got more feedback from this one than probably any I've done in the last 2 years. There's so many to go over, but there were a few that were less than positive. One came in through Jamie's Twitter, and this person wrote to Jamie on, I'm not on Twitter anymore, thank God. I hate that. I hate that platform with a passion. So I'm sorry to all my 20,000 followers that don't know where I am, but you can find me on the Nicolaitan Network. Okay, just come over. It's a registration system, but it's free. Okay, we just have the registration to kind of filter out the riffraff that are just coming there to cause problems. But it is a free service. It's our own social media network, and I'm also on Facebook, although I don't really interact there very often. But if you really miss my tweets and miss all of that interaction, come over to the Nicolaitan Network. It's a much better environment, and I can spend more time really discussing with you whatever's on your mind. But this individual who listened or watched rather on YouTube, I think last week, said to Jamie, nudity, mandatory nudity? Are you agreeing with this? When he said that we are the perverts, I reached my limit. I couldn't watch anymore. Are you understanding this? Okay, so I felt that this was something that needed to be addressed because there's a lot that's incorrect here. Okay, first of all, I don't believe in mandatory anything. I believe in letting people live the life the way they want to live life. And my whole point was, if clothing is something that's important to you, then wear it. But don't call someone a pervert because maybe they're swimming in their backyard without a bathing suit on. That was my argument. I wasn't arguing for a society that that requires nudity. I don't know where you even got that. I went back and listened to my entire, I guess you could call it a lecture, because that's essentially what it was. It was about an hour and a half. I taught about the metaphysics of this subject. And I could not find anywhere in that entire discussion where I said that nudity needed to be mandatory. In fact, I was arguing quite the opposite of that. And when I said, when I called people perverts, I was saying the people that find nudity in its natural state, one that's separated from sexuality. I was saying that people that call, an individual a pervert because they don't want to swim with a bathing suit, or, maybe they just enjoy gardening in the backyard without any clothes on, calling that person a pervert says more about you than it does about them. And that's what I was saying, is that you are the pervert if you're having a problem with this, because there's nothing sexual going on here, and you're infusing something sexual into that person's decision to do this. So I don't know where these misconceptions came from, but a little later on in the tweet, because it went back and forth with Jamie, she admitted that she stopped watching it, and she was having some personal issues, and came back on when Jamie and Father Chris Yates joined. And it's like, well, that's part of your problem, is that when we're discussing things on this show, you need to stick with it. Okay, that's very important, that you spend time actually listening to what I'm saying and not get all, these preconceptions about what I might mean, and just listen to what I'm saying, because I don't play pretentious games. Okay, I'm very matter of fact about everything, which is why I do this show and why I have so many eclectic guests and very unusual topics that most Christians won't even discuss. The reason I do that is because I am an eclectic person, and I like pushing the envelope, and I like learning about different things, and I embrace philosophical diversity. Okay, and this is another example of that. I wasn't arguing for anything to be mandatory. I said at the beginning of the show that this was a philosophical contention. I was not preaching this. It was not a teaching from the pulpit. I thought I made that clear. Okay, so if anyone else wasn't clear on this, I mean, I didn't get anyone else complaining about that particular thing. Most people seem to think it was a very helpful and useful discussion. So hopefully that, clears up any confusion that some of you might have had, or at least this individual on Twitter had. Okay. That's pretty much all from the ether that I want to get into, because I have such a fantastic show tonight. And one thing I want to say before we even get started here. Okay. I know that this show appeals to a lot of Christians who come here just for the Christian topics. And I know this show appeals to a lot of people that are just into the esoteric, metaphysical, and paranormal topics. So we have a lot of different people in our audience. And so I'm going to say that I know that divination can sometimes agitate Christians. I'm going to ask you to please refrain from being hostile or antagonistic towards either me or our guests, because a lot of you might not know, here I am. I'm a bishop of 11 years, but I've been I have been studying the tarot for 30. Okay, so I know probably more about the tarot than I do about my own religion at this point, if you can believe that. I love the tarot. It is fundamental to my metaphysical webinar that I've been teaching for the last 4 or 5 years. It is I would say the best matrix for connecting to the archetypes that make up our psyche. In fact, I would say it's perhaps the most complete system in this regard. Better than any kind of psychological system that we might have. Rorschach tests, the MMPI. We were looking at an Enneagrams a few weeks ago. These are all great archetypal systems, but tarot is fundamental, okay? Because it gets into our nature through art. You can even connect it to music. All these archetypal systems become, they become excited within our minds, and they become alive, and they speak to us. And so it's like having communication, like a conversation directly with God. And instead of just hoping that your prayers are heard, or hoping, using faith that there's something going on there, this is a way of tangibly experiencing this connection with the divine. It's a beautiful thing. And it also has wonderful psychological implications and uses. Not just tarot, but runes and I Ching as well. And we are going to perhaps talk about a lot of that tonight as well. But I'm just telling my more conventional Christians out there, if you're still caught up on this thing that it's a tool of the devil, get over it. Okay? This is an exorcist telling you that's a bunch of bullshit. The tarot is not of the devil. Divination is not of the devil. There were very specific reasons why there were even any biblical prohibitions about it at all. It had a lot to do with the Jewish worldview and them wanting to separate themselves and distancing themselves from anything that could even conceivably be related to pagan practice. That was all it was. It had nothing to do with any mandate or commandment from God that thou shalt not play with tarot cards. All right? And they're just pieces of cardboard with archetypal messages on them that are the same ones that are in your head that you're subconsciously interacting with all the time anyway. The only thing the tarot does is make it apparent, makes it tangible, makes it useful. And it does have spiritual connotations, of course, because the psyche is a spiritual instrument. I'm the first one to say the brain is a spiritual organ. Okay? It is. And the tarot is a way of being able to sort of cultivate that or fine-tune that organ. So I see nothing but great value in it. I know that a lot of my Christian colleagues and peers are going to disagree with me on this, but I personally feel that it got a bad rap because the Jewish worldview was had an agenda, and that agenda made it into the scriptures. And now we're dealing with 2,000 years of this fear of something that is extremely useful. And let's not forget, okay, it really was developed in the form that it exists today. It was really developed by Christians. The earliest tarot decks had iconography on them. Okay. It came out of the Western mystical tradition, which was largely connected to the Christian European worldview. All right, so let's not forget its context, although we'll get into some of that tonight, perhaps. But joining us, of course, is Jamie Wolfe. How are you doing tonight, Jamie?
Hey, good evening, all. This should be very interesting.
I think we're going to have a fantastic time. I'm really looking forward to it. I mean, really, I've been waiting all season for this episode because the tarot is one of my favorite subjects, one of my favorite paranormal metaphysical subjects. It's something that, like I said, I know a lot about. I work with all the time. I find great value in it. I actually came to it because of my background in psychology. And a lot of you know, I don't have I really don't have a degree in pastoral ministry. I have a degree in psychology. That's my academic background. And I, studied Carl Jung, very much an admirer of Carl Jung and his archetypal system. And tarot is perfectly linked in and related to that. And Carl Jung knew it because he studied the I Ching extensively for those same reasons. And he talked about tarot and other things, the path of the fool and all of that stuff that maybe we'll get into tonight. It's definitely a subject that I've been wanting to cover for a long time. Just haven't had an opportunity to until now. But we have a fantastic guest to do this with tonight. And that's the great thing about this episode. And I believe, I might have said Corbie's name right. It's Reverend Corbie Mitleid. Is that correct?
Bingo.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Corbie Mitleid. Sorry. Corbie is a certified tarot master, certified psychic, trained medium, and ordained minister. Her work is showcased in Robert Schwartz's breakthrough series, Your Soul's Plan, Your Soul's Gift, and Your Soul's Love, highlighting her ability to retrieve clients' past lives in detail. With close to 50 years experience, Corbie's abilities include spiritual intuitive counseling, past life retrieval and analysis, mediumship, and spirit guide conferences, including speaking with one's soul. Corbie speaks and counsels at holistic expos, seminars, and workshops throughout the United States and Canada, as well as in one-on-one sessions with clients worldwide. She is the author of 3 books: Clean Out Your Life Closet, The Psychic Yellow Brick Road, You've Got the Magic, Who Needs a Genie? And you can find more about her work and her books at CorbieMitleid.com. That's CorbieMitleid.com. And it's, we'll be focusing predominantly tonight on the psychic yellow brick road because that is the subject matter. But let's go ahead and welcome Corbie to the show. Welcome.
It's good to be here. Thanks for asking.
Thank you for coming, ma'am.
Thank you for taking time to spend with us to talk about this most fascinating of subjects. I always like to give my guests, when they're new to Vestiges After Dark, an opportunity to kind of talk a little bit about how they discovered their this to be their life's work. So what brought you to getting involved in psychic conferences and tarot reading? How did you discover this in yourself?
Well, that's the 30-second elevator speech. And Firth, you are especially going to listen to this and laugh. When I was 9, I read a book called The Witch Family by Eleanor Estes. And instead of thinking, ooh, that's scary, or ha, 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 I thought, and your point is, I knew there was magic in the world. I wanted to go find it. Fast forward to 1973 when I was a senior in high school. And yes, my darlings, that tells you how old I am. That was the year Live and Let Die came out. I was working part-time at Spencer Gifts, and yepper, the James Bond 007 tarot deck. And I bought it because we were all hippies then. You had the elephant bell bottoms and the fringe jacket and your deck. Now,
that's outstanding.
5 years later, everybody else had moved on to roller skates and disco balls. I was still reading the cards. They were fascinating.
Yeah.
So for 20 years, I read for friends, making sure that I could keep my ego on the shelf and I'd be a clear channel for the information. All of a sudden in the early 90s, I could do hands-on healing and talk to dead people without any training. I kind of noticed that the universe had handed me my draft notice and said, hello, you're working for us. So I hung out my shingle part-time. Meanwhile, very checkered career, actress, author, inspirational speaker, writer for a graphic novel series called ElfQuest, executive recruiter.
Oh, ElfQuest.
Producer.
Hold the phones here.
Yeah.
ElfQuest.
What?
Who hasn't heard about, what nerd has not heard of ElfQuest? That's freaking
I
awesome.
I wrote under my legal name, which will not be spoken here. No, that name. But if you're familiar with Hidden Years, the Corbie miniseries, I mean, I have been connected with Wendy and Richard Pini for 40 years. I started as their administrative director back in 1983. But back to the story, always doing the psychic work on the side. Then came 9/11. And as we watched the towers burn, I turned to my husband and I said, I'm going to need to do this work full time. People need to know there are other answers out there. He said, I believe in you, go do it. So for one more year, I worked 70 hours corporate, psychic work, evenings and weekends. In 1 year, I slammed the door in corporate and I've never looked back. Now it's 6 days a week, 14 hours a day. I read 1,000 people a year and I get to get up in the morning. I don't have to get up in the morning. That's the gift.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's fantastic. Wow. I mean, because there's so many people that I think would love to be able to utilize a natural gift like this, a spiritual gift, and be able to make a living doing it. And not a lot of people can figure out how to do that. So it's fantastic when you've been able to cultivate that and make it grow into something that now allows you to find enrichment, because there's nothing in life like being able to make a career out of something that you love.
Look, I tell people, I'm not special. You can do what I do. I always have. In fact, I lost a reality show once because I wouldn't let them tell the audience that I was so special and nobody could do what I do, because you can't. We're all wired like the same house plan.
Yeah.
But spirit, when it says, all right, you're working for me, rifles in your file cabinet to see what you're good at. So what have I got? I was a theater major at Brown and I'm a professional actress in New York. I know characters and story arcs. Words are my drug of choice. I am a writer, so I can tell a story. And I have loved history since I was a little kid in single digits, which all puts me together with able to tell stories with cards, both tarot and oracle, and past lives, because you can have somebody else here who's really good at past lives, just like me, but they don't have the history background. We could see the same vision. They might say, well, it's a long skirt and a big fancy hat, and you're in front of something very ornate, so I know it's old fashioned. Me, I could see the same thing and go, okay, that's a hobble skirt. It's a picture hat, that kind of ostrich feather, and you're in front of the Brandenburg Gate. We're talking Berlin in 1911 or 12. Now, which one's going to give you more information? On the other hand, do not ask me to do spirit art, because I cannot draw a stick figure with a sharp pencil and a lot of prayer. It's not in my wheelhouse.
Right. Yes. I can understand that. Yeah. So, I mean, clearly it's interesting you mentioned acting there, because one of the things that I teach my students a lot about is how acting is a way of interacting with the archetypes in the same way that a psychic is with divination. There's very little difference. In fact, sometimes there can even be ramifications, as we've seen some method actors who take the role too seriously, and it can even have negative effects on their health. And it's always a fascinating thing. We had a show a few seasons ago with Eugenie Bondurant, who played the occultist on Conjuring 3. I worked with that movie, so I knew some of the cast and crew, and we did the whole show about how archetypes get into your head, and when you start to really work with them, they sort of can almost become a puppet master for you. Divination kind of teaches you how to reverse that process so that they're not controlling you, you're controlling them, and are able to then manifest reality out of that interaction, which is where magic comes in. And I always said magic, divination, two sides of the same coin. So
Now, one of the things that you're talking about the archetypes,
yeah,
and I'm going to pop over. Whoosh, I think, had a question about the meaning of the Hermit card. Now, the thing you have to remember, the difference between someone who says, the book says this, and certified tarot master, is we've learned that the cards will speak to us. And sometimes if we read them slightly left of center, it's okay because it's what they want to say. So let's take a look. This is the Hermit card from Eric Dunn's Tarot Illuminati.
Oh, yeah,
now,
I have that deck.
Hermit,
I have this deck, yes.
Okay. Eric is a buddy of mine.
Oh, really? Okay, cool.
Yes, and his work is fabulous.
Yes.
So this card can mean you go to the top of the mountain to talk to God, et cetera, et cetera. But I always look at this as a card that insists on the ultimate truth because of a Greek philosopher named Diogenes. For those who don't know, he used to go around with a lit lantern day and night, and people would say, yo, Di, what's with a lamp? And he'd go, I'm looking for an honest man, and it's pretty damn dark. So in my deck, when this card comes up, it is not only you need to go and think about what's going on, but you need to look for the truth within yourself, and your bullshit tolerance meter must be set at featherweight for the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's both archetype and individualized reading. And when you personalize the story for people who are not familiar with the cards, people love stories. They love pictures, and they will internalize that message and keep it better than if you just said, your spirit guides are telling me that you must be very truthful. No.
Yeah.
The picture tells the story.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you can describe the story in such a way that it imbues an image in that person's head, they take a lot more from it.
Let's take another one. Ooh, the Tower card, doom, gloom, and destruction. Oh my God, my life is going to fall apart. I said, no. I want you to think about it as the imploding sports stadium. Atlanta Braves want to build a new stadium. They got to blow up the old one first and clear the ground. When this card comes up in your life, get ready for change, but it is clearing the ground for something else better. Yeah. If you lose your job, maybe you're going to start your own company. If you get divorced, maybe the next person is better. So this helps them see it as a challenge, but it keeps people from being scared, because being scared is why people think the cards are evil.
Yeah. Right.
Because they think the cards are going to say, you are a terrible person and your life is going to suck rocks. No, the card doesn't say that. Get a clue.
Well, I mean, let's face it, the devil card, that is enough to just be reason enough to avoid them to some of these conventional thinkers, right? What would you say is your interpretation of that one?
Okay. I tell people, this is not Mr. Horns in a Tail. It is not even Jack Nicholson and the Witches of Eastwick. It is being constantly
He was pretty
bedeviled.
sexy in that show. Just saying.
Years ago. But it is being bedeviled by something, someone, or some situation, or holding yourself back from your highest and best. And you need to look at why.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
Again, that, and of course, the card that terrifies rookies. The first time this comes up, I says, no, this does not mean you're going to be hit by a bus on Tuesday, breathe. It's death of an old way of life, death of what you've outgrown, death of what was never you in the first place, big time transformation.
Yeah.
And then they will listen and go on.
That's the key.
That's the art of tarot. Sorry, guys, this is going to come on and off. Old lady hot flashes.
Oh, that's fine. That's fine.
They're with you. My hoodie's about to come off.
Yeah, 1 minute sweat lodge. But the thing is, the more you look at the cards, and it's why everyone has their own favorite deck, and you can interpret the pieces of it to tell your story.
It's like an alphabet. I like to explain to my students, it's an alphabet for communicating with a divine language. It's an ineffable language. And this is the matrix. These are the alphabet. You put them together to form words. Only the words that they create are much more multidimensional than anything we can do with our conventional language.
Much. And you give people challenge and hope with these things. I tell people I'm an intuitive counselor. I am not a fortune teller. I am not Madame Hoo-Ha or Swami Swalanda. Don't go there. My whole gig is here are your opportunities and how to grab them. Here's the tough stuff. Here's how to get through it, around it. Here's your toolbox. Go rock and roll. We hand you the toolbox. We are not the repairman. And the other thing, even the best of us, we're only 85% accurate because we're human. The only one 100% accurate is God, and he does not have a booth at the psychic fair.
That's true. Yeah. It doesn't quite work that way, does it? No. And that's because, what would you say? I mean, my argument there would be that the future is not a fixed point. It's based on multiple potentials, and the tarot is showing you likely potentials based upon the energy at the current moment that's being invested in the situation. But at any time, we can change that energy, and there's a different outcome, right?
Yes. I mean, let's take the typical question that we all get. Does Bruce love me? Well,
right.
I'm not going to give you a yes or no. I'll do 5 cards. You, Bruce, the relationship, what you need to know, and best possible outcome. Yeah. And sometimes I'll do a double deck read. That's where the oracle decks come in. And the karma and relationship deck from John Gray gets put underneath to see what the karma is. Now, if you still don't know what to do when you go, I don't know, then I'll pull the 3 threes. 3 cards for status quo. Y'all just kind of bumble along and nothing changes. 3 cards for the come to Jesus meeting. It's serious counseling and a line in the sand. And 3 cards for hostile bye-bye. It's been nice, but I'm out of here, and you leave. Because those are your 3 options.
Yeah.
The only time that I will lean into one of those answers is if the person has said they are battered or being gaslit or they're afraid. Then I put on the Reverend collar and they get canceled to leave. But otherwise,
Glad I mean,
the you gotta leave sign may have the Beetlejuice sign on the astral. But if they say, I guess I'll just keep working on it. Well, honey, that's your free will.
Yeah.
Live and be well.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
See, a lot of your book, I was reading the Psychic Yellow Brick Road, and a lot of it focuses on some really good points. I want to say I've very much enjoyed it. There's still more to read about it, but you started explaining at the very beginning that not only do few understand what a psychic's work involves, but that few know how to discern a fraud from a genuine one. Right. I guess let's start out talking about the Miss Cleos of the world and how to avoid them. What are your thoughts on that?
Okay. This is a lecture that I used to do all the time when I did shows in Canada for the fabulous Ray Fauché and Stan Mallow. They had the first Star Psychic Fairs. The 2 lectures back to back, one was Psychics 101, the good, the bad, and Cleos, and Psychics 102, how to prep for a great psychic experience. But let's take the first one. People always remember mnemonics. What's that? Like the initials. Mm-hmm. So the word psychic, professionalism, sharing references, you're in charge of your own life, charges, here I can fix anything for a price, inappropriate actions, and connections. And I go through all of that. Let's take the idea that you're going to a psychic fair. You don't know any of us from Adam's house. Well, that's when you have to be a good puppy. First, you do your walkies. That's when you walk around and you look at all the booths and you don't necessarily talk to anybody. You just get a vibe. Then you have to get paper trained. And that's when you go and you collect rack cards or things like that from people who sound interesting. We all have them.
Yeah.
You'll read the cards. You'll have 3 or 4 that you like, and you go back and you talk to us. Talk to us if we're not busy. If we are, you can talk to our front person. But remember, we can tell you we're wonderful, and that doesn't count. And we hire our front people to say they love us. My first one was the wonderful Laura Spickerman. Laura was my husband's office manager at the museum he ran Monday through Friday. Do you think she's going to dismiss his museum director on the weekend? Probably not. So what you do is you look for our testimonial books. We all have them. Those are comments from people that have had readings. Read a few pages. Are we good? Are we kind? Are we accurate? Are we funny? Do we have specialties? Children, dogs, dead people? would they come back? But the last thing is, I cannot stress it enough, check at your heart chakra, guys. You are putting your hard-earned money on the table. If the psychic doesn't feel like they have a brain in their head, they really give a damn about what they're doing, or they're going to give you good information, don't go there no matter how cool the wiki woo looks on the table. It's not your person.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I've seen it at the Renaissance festivals every now and then.
Oh my God! Don't get me started on Ren Fair.
I will go.
Look, I love Ren Fair. I love it to death. I live, 10 miles from it, but man,
I have
25
I have a confession. Every time I go to Ren Fest, I will go and get a reading. And I'm not doing it because I want information about my future. I'm doing it because I'm very curious to see just how bad the experience is going to be, because it always is. From a person who's worked with tarot for 30 years, it's very easy to see, when someone's just going through the motions and doesn't really know what they're doing. Now, I want to say, I will say, everybody that I've worked with at, or at least gone to at Renaissance festivals, they're sincere in their desire to give you a reading. I don't think it's like a Miss Cleo pretending or acting, but they're not good. So when you say the good, the bad, and the Miss Cleos, they are three different things completely. And there are people that have the best of intentions that are just not good at it. And then there are people that are just downright lying, and it's a scam. Yeah.
Now, there were always exceptions at the Pennsylvania Ren Fair. My buddy, the late, great Robert Moyer, who was a certified tarot master, he would read because he thought it was fun.
Yeah.
He enjoyed being able to do that.
Yeah.
But generally, you're going to get a feel if someone is sitting there with a book, or they parrot to you the kind of thing that you'd probably listen to if you had a tarot reading in the Boston Globe.
Yeah.
No. That's not your person.
It sounds like a general horoscope or something. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the thing, if you're going to have useful questions, at least this is how I work. Don't ask yes or no's. Because If you said, is my business going to be successful? Two things. I could look at you and say, and what would happen if I said, no, you're going to lose everything and live in a box under a bridge? Or the fake gypsy can go, oh, no, you have a business curse. How many in your family? 4? You have a dog? $50 every family member, $25 for a dog. He's small, we thanks. I literally saw that done to a woman, not about business, but her family in Toronto by the fake gypsy. And she was told that she needed to burn 400 specially blessed candles at the Roman Catholic Church. I bless real good. Only $1 candle. Her entire family was going to die in a car accident in 2 weeks. She bought it. She left this woman's booth crying hysterically. A bunch of us ran over to find out what happened. And she, wherever she is the reason that I wrote this book, so that people would not have that happen to them.
There might even be a fourth category, Corbie. I encountered back in the early 90s, it was. There was a psychic in Orlando. I won't give names.
Yeah. Good. Let's
very
be nicer.
Very gifted. Genuine. No question about it. The things that she told me, there's no way anyone could have known them. So, and she didn't even use a divinatory tool. She was just one that could just held your hands and she could get information. But she would use this. The readings were cheap. The readings were like, $50, but she would use this as a way of bringing you in and then say that now, in order to fix this problem, now go and, give me $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000 and I'll work up some kind of spell to make this problem go away. So she knew she was talented, but she would use these manipulation tactics. So there's even that adds even more complication to the risk for a client to be taken advantage of. And you even talk about this in your book with that situation in, was it in Pennsylvania? I think it was Philadelphia, rather. You said sometimes the work is even dangerous for the psychic in the most mundane of ways, because your book was speaking about an incident in Philadelphia where local psychics were told that if they were caught doing business after receiving a warning over some 60-year-old law that forbids predicting death, that they'd be thrown in jail. So it's like there's two extremes going on here, and it's you kind of like come back to yourself and you say, what is a person to do? How does one discern this? You almost need a little bit of psychic ability yourself to get through it. You know?
You do. Look, it is not completely benign to do what we do.
Yeah.
The other book, this other psychic book I wrote, is for all the people who want to do what I do. And, I'm 67. There's lots of room. And that's this one.
Oh, you've got the magic.
You've got the magic who needs a genie. Right.
Yeah.
But there are some things in there called Corbie Gets Candid. For instance, one of the things in the back is you'll see my version of a sign-in sheet. And I tell you that you've got to have one, and you've got to have your client, write their name and their birth date and their email or whatever, but you need to have their handwriting. Why? In London, Ontario, about 15 years ago, I read for a guy in his 20s. He didn't like what I told him. The next day, I found an anonymous death threat on my show table.
Oh, my God.
But because it was in handwriting, matched it up, gave it to the Ontario police, and they took care of it.
Yeah, I know a little bit about that.
You have to watch your back, guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, when a lot of people say, oh, you're doing the devil's work, I just look at them and say, have you read Acts chapter 2 recently? Remember the line about even more than I can do, you can do too?
Mm-hmm.
I am doing this work because the universe said, you are working for me. I do it to counsel. I didn't get trained in hands-on healing.
Right.
And it ain't me. I am simply the tube it comes through.
Right.
I'm here in service. So anyone that says, evil, 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 it's like, thank you for sharing. You may think that if you wish, the door's over there.
Right. I deal with it too, Corbie. People will get on to me they get on to me about performing exorcisms. I am an independent Catholic. We talked about this before you came on the show a few weeks ago. And, in the independent movement, the conventional churches, the Roman Catholic Church, although the Eastern Orthodox churches tend to be much more gracious with us, but the Roman Catholic Church really hates us. And that's because it's like, you're not supposed to be doing these things. You don't have authorization. You don't have the Pope's permission. I hear all sorts of nonsense, and it comes right back to the very basics of Scripture where, there was even an event where some people were using Jesus' name to cast out demons, and the apostles went over to Jesus, you want us to stop them? And Jesus is like, let them do it.
Leave alone.
Because it is a gift. I same thing with medium ability. A lot of people think that because there's prohibitions in Scripture, that people have related to mediumship, which I would argue is not mediumship. It's necromancy, which is a completely different thing. But that's another discussion. But mediumship is a gift. I would say it's a charism of the Holy Spirit. So I'm with you completely on what you're saying. And I love the fact that you recognize that you are the instrument that facilitates the connection, that it's not you that's doing this. You're just an instrument. And I love that because that's what we all are.
I equate it with the hammer strutting around on the back deck going, look what I did. See how even that tech stuff is. No, honey, somebody just held you and hit your head against the nail. It ain't you. That's all we are. Mediumship is something that as we discussed before, I won't do publicly. I will never be a Lisa Williams or a James Van Praagh or anything like that because I do things a little differently. And it's intensely private to me. I will not stand up and say, all right, I'm getting someone, their name starts with Q, and I see them in, like golf pants with a hole in the knee and a plaid umbrella. Oh, wow. No, I don't do that. When someone comes to me and they want to talk to their dead person, it's what thing? It's dead person. Mm-hmm. I get it, the dog tags, who they were to you, the name, the year they died and how old they were. That gets me into the energy immediately. Then I'll tell you what I get. And oddly, my guides have decided that I do it by playing charades. What do I mean by that? If I do this, it means that they smoked. If I do this, literally, my hand will just do this. Mm-hmm. It's that they couldn't breathe, were intubated on oxygen when they died. Things like that are so instantaneous. It's not, I figured this out. Some examples of specifics. A woman wanted to speak to her father-in-law who had just died, and I feel myself miming a pool cue. He taught her how to play pool. In Canada, a girl wanted to speak to her grandfather. I feel my hand do this. Now, Americans salute, palm down. Brits and Canadians, palm out. She had just graduated from the Royal Canadian Mounted Police Academy 2 weeks before. These are things that are not, it's a rose, they love you.
Yeah.
But now, the reason that I will not do this in public, I will give you the example. Now, do you want the PG version or the R version?
You can go R. We have no censors here.
Okay, fine. So I'm going to channel my inner Lenny Bruce. There was a biracial same-gender couple. The Black partner had died. Her white widow wanted to speak to her. Now, look at this face. This kid grew up in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. This kid has manners. But what came immediately rolling out of my mouth in flawless urban ebonics was, well, shit, if it ain't my white bitch. And I'm going, but the woman in front of me is laughing and nodding because that is how her partner, Isabel, walked into the house after every business trip.
Oh.
Now, you cannot do that in public. I'm not with this. No,
right,
you don't.
Right.
And but if I had tried to clean up the message, it wouldn't have gotten through.
Right.
On the other hand, I'll do past lives in a gallery. I've done them at first nights because I can drop them in easily. Examples. When Robert Schwartz and I were talking, we were lecturing at Lilydale about 10, 12 years ago. A woman with butch short hair raises her hand and says, I have always been afraid to get hair in my face, even one strand, and I feel like I can't breathe. What is this? And it took me about 3 seconds to say, okay, it's a 5-syllable answer, Lusitania. In 1915, you were one of the passengers on the boat, which was torpedoed by the Germans. You went over the side. You had not bobbed your hair yet. You still had the mass of Edwardian tresses, which took on more water, also got debris caught and pulled you down and you drowned. She looks at me and 3 seconds later says, is that why I'm so afraid to get on a ship? I said, probably.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And so it's not a matter of someone says, oh, I want to find out about my past lives. I must have been Anne Boleyn because I can't wear turtlenecks. No. If you've got a phobia or an obsession, that's where we go with that. Another favorite story. Woman comes to me and says, my son, he's 29. He won't do anything without checking with me first. He won't live more than a mile from me. What is going on? I'm really worried. Okay. 1944, Utah Beach. He's on the beach. He's got a pretty badly mangled leg. You're his commanding officer, and you're dragging him over the dunes. You take some shrapnel too, but you both get out of there alive. She looks at me and she blinks. She says, could you tell me, do you see my rank? I said, yeah, you were a sergeant. She goes, he has called me Sarge since he was 3 years old, and we never knew why.
Oh, whoa.
Wow. Yeah.
This is why you do past lives.
Right.
To figure things out, to know the connections.
Have you ever had a situation where a person had a past life memory of something that is from the future?
Nope.
Never had that.
Nope. Now, admittedly, time is a web, not a line. But when they come to me, they are reaching to what will affect them this time. A future life, you don't want to bring it in because whatever you change now is going to change that future. Past, as we see it with linear time, is already affecting them.
So it's almost like time travel.
It almost is.
Yeah.
You know, give me a TARDIS and Matt Smith, I'd prefer.
TARDIS would be pretty cool. Anywhere in time and space, yes. That would be pretty awesome. But I think you have to be as crazy as the Doctor to be able to fly it. That's the only thing, you know.
Well, I don't know. River Song was not crazy and she could fly it brilliantly.
That's true.
But that's another show.
That's another show, right? The reason I ask you that is one of the things that got me into studying metaphysics and the paranormal was, it always starts with some kind of personal thing that drives you to it, personal experience or something. But one thing that happened when I was a child that I never could understand, and no one ever really could give a good answer for it. I don't think I've even talked about this before. So the audience is going to hear something new tonight.
Yes.
It was, I'd say maybe around 6 or 7 years old, maybe even a little bit earlier than that, but in that time frame, I had a memory. Okay. And it wasn't a dream. It was a memory that I was absolutely adamant that I experienced. I remember even going to my mom and dad saying, "Do you remember when this happened?" And them looking at me like I lost my mind, because that never happened to you, Bryan. And I'm thinking, no, it did.
Well, it did.
And I mean, I was given.
Do you remember?
Yes. And this is the bizarre thing about it. I was in space. We were docking at what could only be described as a space station. It was this
space station or a space station?
A space station that is not unlike anything that currently exists in our current time. We're talking something that would even be probably beyond Star Trek, because this thing was massive. When you went inside it, it was like the size of a planet on the inside. And it was all of this futuristic landscape. And I remember telling my parents, like, do you remember when we flew to this spaceship and the space station, and we lived in this space station and they really thought I was just like overactive imagination. But even to this day, that was not a dream. It was an absolute memory. And I have no way of explaining why I have it, because even if it was a past life, it would have been something that hasn't happened yet,
Or you were a foreign exchange student.
I've thought about that as a possibility. Yeah.
This little pea planet is not the only place.
The only one.
with live things in the world. Sorry, guys, we ain't that important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you may have been remembering a past or even concurrent life when you were from the planet Zorch, and the Zorchians had
a nice big spaceship. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, that makes as good a sense as, to this day, Corbie, I cannot tell you, it still bothers me. It still troubles me, because there's nothing within my paradigm that I currently work within that can explain it, except for something going into these strange, theoretical arenas like this. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Who knows? Could be, extra galactic, like, species 10C on Discovery.
I mean, it was.
We don't have the ability to comprehend. It is like walking an ant into calculus class and expecting him to expound on theory.
Right.
Not enough brain. Sorry, can't hold pencil. Yeah. No, we're like that.
Yes, we are.
We're like that.
And I've always even theorized that we could be living alongside high-level intelligences right here with us that are so far and beyond us that because we're incapable of intellectualizing at their level, we don't even realize that they're there, which could explain some of the paranormal activity that people report.
Cryptids.
Yeah. Cryptids or even ghosts.
Reaching back to ElfQuest, they learn to vibe at a higher rate.
Yeah.
And they literally could disappear by, the final quest, because they understood vibration. And we are a lower, we're not slugs, but we are not all that high up the celestial food chain. I do not believe. Mm-hmm. We do our best.
We do our best, yeah.
Well,
we're not killing each other. We do our best.
Well,
yeah, right.
It could be that we're a failed experiment. Look at Ukraine.
Yeah.
We don't know. But
it's very zoo-like here, isn't it?
These are just parts we play.
Yeah.
And some people get really upset with the idea that they'll fade when they die.
Yeah.
And the way I explain it is I go back to Matt Smith. I say, look, Matt Smith, great actor. He was the 11th Doctor, the crazy best friend with the braces and the bow tie. Mm-hmm. But when he was done being the Doctor, he turned around and became Prince Philip in 2 seasons of The Crown. five just wildly different personalities done by the same actor. When we cross over, my understanding, you will retain all the good things that you were. My father, who died in 2001, he was my best friend. When I get to chat with him, he was a fabulous doctor. He will sometimes come in when I do a medical. Oh. Brilliant, terrible punster, hugely compassionate, very loving. Those are all the things that came from his soul. What is no longer, what got dissolved of Jerry?
Yeah.
His hypochondria, his depression, and his anxiety. There's no place for that once we're out of the body. So what you will lose are the things that trip you up.
Your imperfections.
That drops away. Right. Yeah. That drops away and you're still you. Now, does that mean I will always remember being John Smith? Look, 40 years ago, I was the Queen of the East for the Society of Creative Anachronism. I was Queen Tamara. And it was everything to me then. That was 40 years ago. And I remember being her, but I'm not really her anymore. Mm-hmm. And that's what happens when we cross over. You will remember being Gabish, Jamie, Corbie, but we won't be this anymore.
I like that.
That's where, even if someone who is staunch Bible person says, God says we only live once, I'll say, you're right too.
You're right.
The soul is what comes down time after time, but we are one and done. This recipe will never be repeated.
Oh, you are right. I can totally get behind that. I've taught my students that very lesson, not in those exact same words, but pretty much the same message.
Pretty much verbatim, yeah.
We're talking with Corbie Mitleid about her work in divination, tarot, past lives, mediumship. Don't go away. We'll be back after this.
this happy fast one.
Showing off, don't wanna have to wait tonight. Better off, I'm gonna find my way tonight. Won't you talk to me? I wanna heal your sorrows. Talk to me, we'll make a new tomorrow. Talk to me, one night to find the answer. Talk to me, what makes this happy faster?
What makes this happy fast one?
Welcome back, everyone, to the second part of Vestiges After Dark. It's been a wonderful discussion so far, and we've got more to come. Father Chris Yates is joining us for the second part here, and we have a caller on hold, so don't hang up. We'll take your call when we come back here in just a moment. We're talking about divination, tarot, mediumship, psychic ability, even past lives. Don't go away. Well, thank you, everybody, for waiting through the break there. And we're getting back into the discussion by taking a call from the 808 area code, I believe is Hawaii. Hello, you're on the air.
Yay! Oh, hi. Thank you all so much. It's been very interesting. And
Thank you.
so I occasionally join, but it's just really wonderful to be here and be live. Thank you.
Yes, thank you
and
for calling
I am
in.
calling from Hawaii. Okay, so my question is, hi, Corbie. If I may say your first name, I wanted
Please.
to ask.
Yes.
Can I ask any question? Okay, thank you. You're very interesting and very funny, actually. Which humor is important in the world we live in right now. But I was just wondering if you feel,
I've done stand-up about
I know.
being a psychic, honey, so there you are.
I know. So God bless you for your gifts. And first, I wanted to ask if you do private phone readings. If you do, if you could maybe if you do, this is a way of contacting you.
This is my full-time job, honey. You bet. 6 days a week. You can't have me tomorrow, Wednesday's off.
Okay, well, maybe if you could put in the information on phone number, email, how to get a hold of you, that'd be wonderful.
Promise we will.
By the way, I've seen you, this is on, and Sister Mary on Ghost Adventures. Very powerful stuff you do. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Anyway, I will keep it really quick. I know other people want to call in, but
Oh, no.
about my relationship I'm in currently. I'm with someone I've been with for a long time. Is a wonderful person. But do the spirit see any possibility of leaving the relationship and meeting someone else down the line, or is it best to work on being in this current relationship and making peace with it?
All right. So, if you don't mind, your name again is first name.
Mary Rose.
Okay. Do you want to give me the initial of the other person? If you don't want to say the name.
The first name, no problem. K.
Okay.
It's just causing a lot of pain right now.
Okay. I'm going to pull what I called the 3 3s. Remember those? Status quo, come to Jesus, and bye. And we'll see which one it is. But remember, you have to make the decision, my darling, not me. Okay. Status quo.
I know. Thank you. The reminder was appreciated. Thank you.
Okay. Knight of Swords. High stress. In my deck, that's the archetypal Italian guy. Jealous, possessive, wants what he wants. When he wants it, doesn't care if his blood's on the sword. So you've got stress, you got broken heart, and you've got communication.
Oh, wow.
So if you just stick with it, it will fall apart, and you will be sure to tell him why in big flaming letters.
There's no communication. It's not going to work.
Right. If y'all have the come to Jesus meeting, that's when you find out what's underneath that needs to be handled quickly, quietly, and diplomatically, or all hell breaks loose. That is the man who makes money with his mind. That's a lawyer. That's a counselor. Don't know if you're married or not, but you must have someone who is objective. You got to have a Vulcan, okay? Absolutely objective and logical to help you figure this out. It's a risk, but it might work. If you decide, hostile, bye-bye, it's been nice, but I'll send you a postcard, you're not going to get a lot of support from him for doing it.
I'm ready to make some big decisions that don't line about moving on. I just would like to keep my heart chakra open to meeting someone else, having experiencing love, you know.
That's where these come in. Always let the psychic finish what you're saying. Okay, you're not going to get a lot of support from him. And you got to make sure that you're not carrying too many responsibilities. It's not your fault. Learn to say no to other people. You are reinventing your life. You're going to have to live a little frugally. That's okay. A little frugally for a while. But also that says keep your emotional coin to yourself as well. Do not do a rebound situation. You need to fall back in love with yourself before you go and you find the next cutie patootie who can eat crackers in bed. Deal?
Thank you so much. You're very powerful, and I would love to do a private reading with you. Thank you.
Some relationships are a stepping stone, dear.
Corbie, why don't we go and go ahead and use this as a good opportunity to give your information as to how people can get into contact you for a private reading, and then we'll do it again at the end of the show.
Okay. I'm so simple, guys. You cannot avoid me on the internet. CorbieMitleid.com is my website. Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, Medium, Patreon, YouTube. It's all Corbie Mitleid. The only one that's different is on Facebook. It's Fire Through Spirit. And that's where I do a free reading hour once a month. I think the next one is going to be on Sunday, April 17th at 4 p.m. But put my name into the internet and you will find me easily.
Fantastic. And thanks to the caller. And thank you, Corbie, for doing that. I guess I should have asked you if you wanted me to tell the audience that you weren't taking readings through this show. But I appreciate you doing it. I don't
mind. But let me make clear, I will not do the following. Number one, no mediumship on the air. That is intensely private. Contact me separately. Health, it's not in my wheelhouse. I mean, I'm like your general practitioner when you have boo-boo. But if you have a serious health situation, a good intuitive is always willing to send you to the best professional they know.
Right.
And to me, Stacy Wells, STACIWELLS. I've known her for 20 years. She's the best medical intuitive in the U.S. She can look into your DNA. You got health, you go to her. Everything else we can talk about.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. We have Father Chris Yates with us tonight. How are you doing out there in Australia, Father?
I'm okay. I'm not doing too badly.
Sun is shining, unlike here where it's dark and we get some tornadoes on the way.
Yeah.
I did see that. I mean, certainly.
There'll be no sleep tonight. No.
Yeah, lots of people asking for prayers in the chat, so I certainly will offer those. It's kind of it's changeable today. Yesterday was nice and sunny. We've had a weird summer. It's been very wet, but today's a bit changeable. Yesterday was nice.
Okay, well, fantastic. Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us this evening. I guess it'd be a good time to maybe, before we get back into maybe having more conversation about some areas of Corbie's book that I'd like to touch on. Is there anything in the audience that you noticed that we should ask on behalf of anybody in the chat room?
I think the same Mary Rose had asked about the hermit card, but I think you did cover that one earlier on.
Yeah.
Well, she asked specifically what happens if the hermit card comes up repeatedly.
On a regular basis.
On a regular basis.
Yes.
Is that different, Corbie, than, is that something that she should be paying attention to?
I would think so. Remember, when you see that, even if it has a different contextual basis, they're holding up that light of truth. You've got to look at your life. If you have to go up to the top of the mountain to do it, to read your own entrails. But what are you not seeing about your own life that will make a change? That's how the hermit card always has a backstory for me, no matter where else it comes in.
One of my students, Joy Keeling, who used to be a co-host on this show, said in the chat, Corbie, that it's almost like you took that you've been taking my classes. And I think what I would like to say to that is I've noticed so much of my own instruction in the things that you shared, and we have not had much conversation, you and I. We only talked very briefly on email.
We met tonight.
We really met tonight. That was it. And no time to really chat until now. And I kind of do that by design, because I prefer the conversation to happen organically on the air. It makes it more interesting. And I like to learn with my audience rather than kind of have inside information that I can sort of lead along the conversation. I'd rather the conversations just happen naturally. But I am fascinated at how much you have shared so far that are just, single points from the things that I have taught my students over the years, which shows me that,
darling, it means you're good and you have a brain.
Yeah, I guess. And that we're drawing from, we're connecting to that source, and we're drawing a lot of the same, realizations from it. Yeah.
They are tarot truths. That's where you're going.
Yeah. Yeah. Fascinating. It's just great stuff. Now, in your book, if I can get into it, you talk about something that really hit home with me. Because as you know, I think, we, Jamie Wolfe and myself, we are an exorcist team. We sometimes are on television, but more often than not, we're doing this off TV. And one of the challenges I I run into all the time. Father Chris Yates is also an exorcist in Australia, so I know that he's dealt with this as well, is that there are times where a client reaches out to you for help. They're having I don't really like calling it deliverance ministry or even exorcism ministry. I do that because it's kind of what people expect to hear, and I want to make sure they know what I'm talking about when I say it. But really, more accurately, it's spiritual problem resolution. It almost never involves exorcism. Almost never. Mm-hmm. It's really people that have spiritual problems that need some guidance of someone that can kind of help them and facilitate a solution that they themselves have to work out, that only you're there to sort of kind of almost be their coach. But one of the things is that people are not usually ready to accept the information that you have to tell them. You touch on this in the book. You say that in the section where you have when not to have a reading, you talk about the client not being open enough to accept information that is being received by the psychic.
Yes.
And I experience this all the time. Jamie does. Father Chris, I'm sure you do too. And I'm sure the answer is probably very similar in terms of how do you deal with it. But how do you go about this with clients that that they need to hear a message? It's going to be a difficult message. That message is what's going to help them move on, and they just don't want to hear it. How do you deal with it?
Well, number one, I'm just the messenger. I'm just the hammer hammering the deck. And I remind myself, it is not my job to fix their life. I present the information. It's like presenting a gift. You don't keep watching to make sure they are using your air fryer right, that you got them. You hand them the gift, and they're going to use it or they're not.
Yeah.
What you're referring to is probably the story about a woman in Kitchener, Ontario. I saw a couple of challenging things for her, and I told her what they were, but it was, you might want to, not you will. Mm-hmm. And so she stands up, she looks at me, she says, "You suck," and she walks away. Okay.
Well, we had similar stuff to that.
Oh, yes. I would actually consider that to be one of the good ones if they said I suck. Usually it's worse than that, but anyway. I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's okay. So the next time I was in Kitchener, who was the first person in my chair, she goes, "Last time I said you sucked." I go, "Yes, I remember." Because you told me that I was probably going to take on a boarder and then I might want to sell my house. And I thought that was all bull. But my daughter got pregnant and moved home. And now I'm going to sell my house because I want to help raise my grandson. And I still don't like you, but I want to know what else you say. Don't shoot the messenger.
Right.
I don't know about you, but because yes, it is something that anyone in ministry or counseling comes across. I remind myself how often I actually know better and don't follow that advice myself. It's just
we're all guilty of that.
I mean, I've said this on the show before. Things like forgiveness and self-forgiveness and things where I'll give the advice to anybody that asks me that that all of that forgiveness is nailed to the cross. And yet I will still believe that, except for my sins, because my sins are especially terrible and no way could I be forgiven, even though I know that's nonsense. So
your nose is growing, Pinocchio.
Exactly. So, and it's actually an act of pride, so even that, I just remind myself that, I'm just as guilty of ignoring good advice as anybody else. So.
Mm-hmm. But we can't save everybody. We must accept that we cannot save everybody, because when you think you have to, that's your ego getting in the way. Maybe
they're even capable of saving people.
What if it's important that they ignore what you say in order for them to be hit upside the head with a bigger clue brick? Yeah. So maybe it was exactly the way it had to be.
That's kind of my approach to it. And I know that sometimes even my own team gets frustrated with me, but I know that that's been my approach. Is I do not force myself on people. I do not push myself into their lives. They need to come to me freely. And if there's even the slightest chance that, they don't really want the help that I can give, then I basically tell them, these are your other options. If you change your mind, you know where to reach me.
That is so brilliant because often people ask me and especially if it relates to what essentially becomes preaching. Yes. I just say, just remember, you asked me this question. I didn't volunteer this information to you.
Exactly.
You asked
That's
me.
right.
And so if just remember, because and a couple of times I've caught people up, even family members who have said, you're preaching X, Y, Z, blah, blah, blah. And I say, I've not done that. And they go, oh, no, you haven't. In other words, it's pure projection.
Yes.
That's what they expect.
It's what they expect, but it's also there's an internal voice going on, which actually they might want to listen to, but they might be best to choose to listen to, but they don't want to listen to it, and so they project it onto something else so they can ignore it.
Well, Corbie, you kind of touch on this in the book also with the drive-by psychic shootings.
Oh, hot button.
Let's talk about that.
My ears just perked up.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's a drive-by psychic shooting? Okay, kids. This is when someone takes a cue from the Long Island medium and walks up to you. They don't give you the spiritualist, my name is so-and-so, may I come to you, which is, the door opens, the knock. They just say, hi, I have a message from you, from your Aunt Mabel. And she says that you're really awful to your son and you should be better. Just telling you, and walks away. Yeah. Because they see the Long Island medium walk up to somebody who was in the produce section of Wegmans, go, excuse me, your Aunt Doris, she says you got a bald tire in the back and you're going to die in a car accident if you don't fix it in a week. Just telling you, walks away. My darlings, let me explain how this really works. She's got a PR team who goes and they check out all the Wegmans stores on the line. Then they choose one. Then they interview people. Then they sign a model release. Then they rehearse it.
That sounds more realistic. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's not how it works. No. Okay. Now, if anyone ever does that to you, you just stop them right there and say, I refuse the information and I don't want to hear it. I didn't ask you. And if they keep pushing you, you go to the manager and you complain. This happens with people at psychic fairs.
Yeah.
You've got little dancing butterfly who's all glurpy purple with angels, love, and light. And she's a Reiki person. And I've got a headache. Oh, I can fix that for you. And she comes. I said, please don't, because I'm very picky about whose energy I take. Yes. No, really, I can.
No,
and when she doesn't stop, I go, I said back up. You're not very love light, are you? No, because you didn't listen and I'm from New York. But that's the whole thing. Why are people afraid of us? Because they think we have no boundaries.
Yeah.
They think that I am peering in your head as you walk by.
Yeah, they think you can hear their thoughts, and yeah.
I have to say that triggered several memories for me. Look, I'm from Manchester in England, and we're
the voice was definitely not Aussie friend. I could tell.
But we're also not known for cloaking our feelings, shall we say? But also, like, I'm not touchy-feely, and so now. In the church, so many times people say, "Oh, let's pray." They want to hold hands, or they want to. I'm like, leave me alone. I'm one of the people who didn't need COVID regs to tell me that people should stay.
Did you ever just take your cross and do this in front of me?
But it's really, I hate it. It's awful. It's like it's a total imposition.
Yeah. I know.
See, I'm the opposite. I'm all touchy-feely. I'm a complete strangers.
I am when I know it's accepted.
I
used to be more so before COVID.
Yeah,
I'm a serial hugger. I admit it. I don't.
But I think
a chance to say no.
Don't get me wrong. I mean,
But are you a drive-by hugger, Jamie?
I think I might be.
Are you really? Wow.
Yeah. I've done a lot of hugging in my time.
You got to look out.
There's also the psychological version, and this happens a lot in churches. I hate to do this, but it does happen more in evangelical kind of Protestant churches where people say, "Oh, let me pray for you," and then what they do is they lecture you through prayer. They pray what they want you to be, and how they want you to think.
In Jesus' name, I pray that you wake up to your sin and your terribleness and how you look in the mirror in the morning. I don't know. In Jesus' that happens.
Yeah, I don't subscribe to that at all.
And I don't mind people saying things like that to me in a conversation, but don't cloak it in prayer.
Yeah.
That's the point.
You know,
That's the point.
Well, religion is the most misused thing in the world.
That's when you use God.
Sure is.
There was a wonderful Yiddish word. It's called grisha. What's a grisha? It's when you stick in the knife, but you twist it to make sure it's in there good.
Yeah.
Prayers like that are a grisha.
Yiddish gives us a lot of great words. There's no doubt about that.
True that.
Well, it's a misuse. It's a misuse of power, and it's why I think religion is such a bad word now, because it's been so misused and it's wreaked havoc on so many people's lives that people are done with it, and it makes those of us who do subscribe to a particular religious worldview or to some type of spiritual formality, it makes us look nuts, because there are other people the larger number of people in their lives that also claim to subscribe to a type of spirituality, and they are nuts.
It's actually it's the tool of cowards, isn't it? I mean, I remember once going, and I won't say too much, but being called before someone who thought he was a bishop, but anyway, somebody who was a bishop, and to whom I had to at that time was subject to authority to. I won't say too much more, although Father Firth, who's watching, knows exactly what I'm talking about. But he's the one with the James Bond tarot cards, by the way.
Oh, he has the James Bond tarot card?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
He's beautiful. Anyway,
can you even get those anymore, Corbie? Are they even available for sale anymore?
They're now called Tarot of the Witches.
Tarot of the Witches.
If you have. Yes, if you try to get the actual James Bond 007, the deck with Roger Moore on it, that's like $400. It's
that's probably what he's got, by the way, because he's a bit of a collector.
So he has like the original one. Wow.
Yeah, but I will find out for you. I'm sure he'll message me in a minute. But but I remember being called before this bishop, and it was just, I asked my chaplain to pray for you before we start, and then this prayer. And then here I'm going to investigate you just because I don't like you, even though there's no complaint or anything. That's what happened. Yeah. I just think, you pussy.
I'm going to try to get rid of you. God bless.
Yeah. Why don't you just man up? Why don't you just man up and have an argument with me? And of course, I know the answer to that.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and in the end, I said, bye-bye. It was just... It's the act of cowardice, and so many people hide behind prayer and behind process as well. By the way, that's another story. But anyway, I don't know where I'm going with that. Sorry.
No, it's a good point. I think Corbie, you're a minister as well, so a lot of the same challenges that we have in the particular ministries that we deal with are, I'm sure, identical to what you deal with too, because a lot of people are coming to religion or religious leaders as a type of crutch, hoping that, I like to say it this way, that they see me as, Gandalf or Dumbledore coming in with a staff or magic wand, and I'm going to do all the work for them, and I'm going to fix it with a quick incantation, and then their lives are perfectly normal again. They don't want to invest work in relationship to the divine. They don't want to cultivate that relationship. They don't want to have to recognize where their failings are and work on them and perfect them. And that's the real challenge. And I imagine you see this too.
I do. Now, non-denominational, I'll confess, the reason that I originally became part of the Sanctuary of the Beloved 10, 12 years ago. Number one, that was before same gender was the law of the land. Mm-hmm. And I had a lot of friends who batted for the same team. If they wanted sacred ceremony, by God, I was going to do it. And when I traveled, it was protection when, forgive me, I traveled south of the Mason-Dixon line. We don't like fortune tellers here. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Reverend Corbie, and this was pastoral counseling. Oh, Reverend, I'm so sorry. You go right ahead.
Let me go make you a pie.
But you don't put on the collar unless you mean it. Mm-hmm. Once it happened, I have had to be what I call a hedge priest. I don't have a congregation, don't have a building, but you need counseling, you need prayer. I have done funerals for stillborn children. I have helped someone off a bridge. That collar, it's welded on.
Mm-hmm. It is.
And God really doesn't care if you're Christian, Jewish, Buddhist, Muslim, or believe in Ralph the Wonder Dog. He doesn't. He, she, it. Somebody up there loves you, wants the best for you, and is willing to work with you, and then you're in the army.
Mm-hmm.
And you just are.
Yeah.
I agree with that. And I would actually say that in Father Chris's state, that collar is welded on. It's truly part of his neck at this point, right? That doesn't come off, right?
I've seen him in a t-shirt once.
Yeah, but the collar was on underneath. I guarantee it.
Yeah, you put it on over his cassock. Yeah. So
I don't go swimming in it.
You need to think he screws his head off every night and puts it on a shelf.
we give him a hard time, Corbie, because he's always in uniform, and I almost never am, and so it's just our particular personalities there.
I think it's partly personality. I think it's partly culture as well. But I am just so English. But it's also partly. I've certainly said this in private chats with you, Bishop Bryan, that a lot, for a lot of people, they have been damaged by people who wear this uniform.
Mm-hmm.
And I know, and I'm not criticizing those who choose not to wear it, for that reason, in terms of, not wanting to represent that to people. But I just take a different view in my life, which says, actually, people have a need and I think a right to have that out, so I've not hurt them. Okay.
Yeah.
But someone else that wears these clothes has. And so actually, I think they do get to, I think we've got to front it up, I think we've got to let people,
vent,
have their
have the catharsis,
anger, and also then be a sign of healing, because I'm not an abusive person, and so that's the kind of view. The other element to it is when people have found out I'm a priest, because I wasn't wearing these clothes afterwards, that they're not grateful for that. Do you know what I mean? Like they feel like they've been ambushed.
Yeah.
And
that's
so
true.
Yeah, so look, it's complicated, but by no means I don't wear them all the time, I can assure you. And
I'm just teasing you.
And it is kind of specific to what you do. Of course, the irony is that when we celebrate the liturgy, none of this is visible.
No, it really isn't. Not really.
Vesture. So this really isn't a sign of priesthood. A stole is, but it's and it's actually an American invention, so it's kind of
is, because the cassock is the more ancient thing, and
I do generally wear one,
and the Orthodox versions don't have the white collar,
No.
Jamie Wolfe, questions from the chat.
Dee had a good one for Miss Corbie.
Mm-hmm.
Do you allow others to handle your deck? Do they do the shuffle, or do they just choose the cards?
Neither. They don't choose the cards. When I first do their 10 overview, I'll say 3 piles, left, middle, and right. Which one do you want? But no, people don't handle my cards because, we've just been through 2 years of Murder Hornet Bingo and Hold My Beer. And I'm doing a show this weekend, and the positivity level is like 18%. I am not thrilled, but I committed to doing the show. I'm going to wear a mask. I'm going to have a fan blowing across my table.
Why? Anyway.
What do you mean, why?
It's just ridiculous.
What's ridiculous, Chris?
It makes it so difficult.
It does. But I am a 3-time cancer dancer. I'm immunocompromised, even though I've had both shots and a booster. And unfortunately, in a lot of psychic fairs, people walk in and they say, God will protect me.
Yeah.
Or I don't believe it. And I've had people sit across from me. I'm a nurse and I work in the ER and I don't believe in it. And they're this close to me. No.
Well, it's whatever you're comfortable with.
Yeah, you have to do what's comfortable for you. That's definitely true. And if you're at if you're at higher risk, then you have to be extra careful for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I would think there'd be a risk of transfer of energy too. I wouldn't want someone touching my deck. It'd be like someone touching my motorcycle. You just don't touch my shit. Yeah.
But prior to COVID, did you let them, or did you have like two different decks, one for yourself, one for the public? How do you do it?
Neither. They didn't touch.
Never touched.
This is everything that I use.
Oh, that's fancy.
8 different Oracle decks.
Wow.
Plus this. And I even have a children's deck. Now.
Oh, really?
Do you know why it's important? Because it's a very busy psychic fair. And I have a woman on my at my table, and her little 2-year-old is squirming, and she says, "Oh, please, can Muffin pull a card? I mean, Muffin really wants to pull a card." And Muffin pulls a card. What am I supposed to do? Look, Muffin, death. No. So I tell every
card, his name
reader,
is death.
Have a children's deck. See, this is cat wisdom.
Oh, yes.
Oh, I love it.
I've seen that one.
See?
Yeah.
Oh,
and there's nothing scary, and Muffin can pull a card, and Mom says, and then we go back to really reading.
Nice.
And then they had a big pet
and
smart
that
to get
deck
it familiar.
the kids can pull. Yes.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
But when I am a fast reader, and so when I hear from Spirit, this one, they don't have time to look at the deck and decide. Each of my Oracle decks comes to me and says, "This is my purpose." And so the John Gray deck is for karma and relationships. The Fairies Oracle by Bryan is for people who really need a kick upside the head. I have a gorgeous Ganesh deck that I use when someone needs.
Oh, that is beautiful. My goodness.
And I make sure that people understand who he is, because a lot of people don't.
Right.
And I say he is the Lord of Obstacles. Everybody in India has a statue of him. The American equivalent is the Italian-American grandmother in South Philly with a peeling statue of the Virgin Mary in the back by the barber. They get that.
Always.
So, but the point is, it's just, these are tools. It's like a violin versus a trumpet versus a snare drum. These are instruments that I can get the message across to them with. So they're not scared, so they listen, and so they will take it in. I am not there to amaze them with my wiki-woo. I am there in service, period, end of statement.
Well, a big part of their role in this is asking, I guess, appropriate questions. Your book details the dangers of asking inappropriate questions. Can you give us some examples of that and what kinds of things to avoid as a client?
Well, for one thing, I will not do remote spying. Classic example. Woman came to me and said, "I want to know where my husband is sleeping with his mistress." I'm sorry, Mrs. Cooperson, I don't do remote spying. Oh, well, how many people has he slept with? Mrs. Cooperson, I don't do remote spying. Oh, all right. Well, is he sick? And if he dies, am I going to get his money? And I tell my front person, "I'm sorry, I'm not connecting with Mrs. Cooperson. Please give her money back." Remote spying.
Yeah.
John and Betsy are dating. They could each ask about each other. They break up. They can't. John cannot ask who's Betsy dating now, because their permission was not given.
Right.
The only exception, mothers may spy on their children any way they can. It's okay. I get it. But if your mother comes in, same deal. Don't you complain to me.
What about questions about, well, I mean, let's ask about, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but I wanted to ask you, and we got off on a different tangent, but have you ever in a reading saw a person's actual physical death? And obviously you probably would not report this to them.
Nope.
Have you ever seen it though?
I have with my guides, because we don't have one exit point. We come in with like 4 or 5. Maybe you die of a fever at 4, a car accident at 18, a mugging at 38, cancer at 50, or a stroke at 80. Each of those places, your soul is saying, "Are we done?" And if you're done, your ticket is punched. If not, you live. I was driving upstate New York, winter. I hit a patch of black ice under snow. I overcorrected. I took down a tree, a telephone pole, flipped the car's electrical wires on it. I wasn't wearing a seatbelt.
Well, you weren't
At
playing,
no
were you?
time. At no time did I feel like I was dying. I thought I was on an e-ticket for Disney. And I know exactly which one of my guides and angels were driving the car. When I got out, a couple of bruises, nothing else. When I saw the car at the wrecking place, every part of the car was crushed in except the driver's area.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, if someone had said, I see you dying in a car accident, I would have died of fright. People don't need to know. It is between them and God. And you have no right to tell them.
I agree.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to know. Why would anyone want to know?
I don't want to know. I had a palm reader tell me, she said, it's not how long you live, dear, it's how well you live. And I'm looking at her like, what? And then 20 years later, I had my accident and died.
Oh, please.
But
when I was 11 years old, 1966, Ventnor, New Jersey, I went to a gypsy on the boardwalk who told me I was going to live until I was 89. I've always remembered that, but I have changed it to I will renegotiate my contract should I choose to at 89.
There you go.
And I've been telling you that for decades, so I think I've got that handled.
Yeah, I've already beat my expiration date too. So
my grandmother was adamantly against any kind of fortune telling, any divination. She was terrified of it. Even the thought or conversation of it would upset her. And it was relating back to, I guess, when she was very young or younger. Her younger sister went to a psychic fair or something like that. And a gypsy, the very, you're talking like maybe the 1940s or 50s here. Was doing readings with a standard playing card deck. And
yes, they do that.
Yeah. And she drew, this is my grandmother's report of this, so I don't know exactly how accurate any of this was, but she said her sister drew the ace of spades, and the gypsy said, you're going to die soon. And the next year she had a brain tumor and passed. So my grandmother didn't see that as the psychic predicting it. And that's besides the ethics of what was said. But she said that it was this going to the psychic and drawing the ace of spades that made it happen. Now, I don't believe that, but it shows how when you violate the code of ethics, how it can create all sorts of problems down the road for any number of people. So, I mean, in my knowledge of the ace of spades in the gypsy interpretation is not death, but I'm not sure if she might have misunderstood what was being said, but that's what happened. And it definitely bothered her.
Well, spades and swords, remember that the modern playing deck comes from tarot.
Right.
And I always read the ace of swords as you got to cut right down the middle. Good, bad, truth, bull, keep it, dump it.
Yeah.
You have to be in your mind and you have to be sharp.
Yeah.
But it makes more money if you say, oh, you will die next year. But I have this candy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder, I would love to have known more about the story, because I always wondered if there was some kind of manipulation going on there to try to get, her to buy something. But she did get a brain tumor, but my grandmother just attributed it to going to the psychic because she said that, they'd let the devil into their lives. My grandmother was extremely superstitious. Everything from the umbrellas in the house to walking under ladders to black cats crossing the path. You name any.
Keeping the purse off the floor.
Yeah. I'm sure. I don't remember that one specifically, but I'm sure that would have been one too. Breaking mirrors was a big one. I remember one time my aunt dropped a mirror and she lost it. She was a very superstitious woman. But I don't know. It comes from, I think, these kinds of misrepresentations. This is why I think it's important for those of us who do work in metaphysical fields or religious or spiritual arenas need to be very down to earth and specific and ethical.
Superstitions was just an ordinary part of growing up for me. I mean, I don't mean in some kind of way that people would say, oh, well, that's it. You're going to die. I don't mean that. But I just mean that, like, nobody walks under a ladder. If a black cat crossed the path, it would be like someone would say it. Like, and I mean, like every generation. Like, I was a kid, my grandparents, my parents, my friends, my siblings would say this. So I think superstition is a kind of natural instinct. It's kind of part of your culture. They are culturally specific.
Mm-hmm,
You know, if you don't have ladders in your culture, then walking under one doesn't mean anything to you. So, you know, although it's perfectly sensible advice, by the way, not to walk under a ladder, but not for
particularly if someone's on it, right?
But no, Father Chris, you're exactly right. Let's take ravens. Ravens, the British Isles, the Morrigan. Ravens are, you know, death, etc. You go to British Columbia, the Haida, the Tlingit. Raven is first cousin to Coyote the trickster. Raven brought them the sun, the moon, the stars, and fire. It's just the bite, but it's what they have been taught the bird is about.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same with snakes here. You know, I mean, I remember there was a because the story of the rainbow serpent for certain Aboriginal groups, not all. That's a mistake people make. There's lots of different Aboriginal spiritualities and creation stories, not just one. But, you know, the rainbow serpent is the creator for some of them. And you know, a well-meaning Christian church wanted to have the rainbow serpent on a trip ticket at the back of their church, but you can't, because in Christianity it means the devil. Like, and you know, as well intended as you want to be, you can't mix metaphors like that. It doesn't work.
No.
By the way, Father Firth did say this is the one he's got. So
look at that! There it is.
I knew it would be.
Bringing me back to 1973.
I knew it would be.
That's one of that was actually one of Roger Moore's best ones, in my opinion. It was still when they were making it more of a serious drama. And, you know, his got increasingly more silly as time went on. So the early Roger Moores are very much in line with Sean Connery's style. Yeah. You know, humorous moments, as all Bonds have, but not slapstick silly. Like there's one later on in Roger Moore's era where there's like a pigeon that does a double take when he comes out of he's driving down in some like busted up vehicle where it's just the front of the car, you know, and then the pigeon does the double take. It's like, my gosh, you know, this is a little too silly.
I'm a big Bond fan. I love them all, but I actually think that the contemporary Bond needs to get a little bit more silly.
A little lighter.
It's gone a bit too serious.
It is very serious. And the last one in particular, was, I think, way over the top.
A little too dark.
I did enjoy it, but I agree. It needs to get a bit more lighthearted again.
Yeah.
You know, maybe not Roger Moore, but, you know.
More like Sean Connery.
Another deck.
Like Sean Connery. Yeah. You know, I mean, Sean Connery had some great moments.
That's right.
I mean, one of the funniest things wasn't even something he said. It's like I think it was in Diamonds Are Forever where he's looking for Blofeld, right? Because he killed his wife. And he goes up to this woman at the pool and he takes her top off and strangles her with it. Where is he? You know, that's hilarious. That's the kind of funny, crass, off-color, politically incorrect Bond that I love. You know, and I think, I mean, I don't know, maybe they don't feel they can make movies like that anymore because it would upset too many people. But that was the character. That's how Ian Fleming envisioned him. And I think we should be true to the character. It was
when people used to write films to entertain people instead of educate them.
Yeah, I think that's true. Yeah, it was. It used to be about entertainment. That's true.
You used to go to church to be preached at. Now you put Netflix on.
Yeah, that's right. My goodness. Are there any other questions from the chat, Jamie, that we might have? I'm trying to look, but I can only look.
Currently caught up on the questions as far as I see.
Okay, excellent.
I think so.
Well, Corbie, why don't you go ahead and again relate to the audience how they can get in touch with you and everything else, and any events that you got coming up that you want to talk about. The floor is yours.
Okay. CorbieMitleid.com. That's the website. That's where you register to have readings with me. There's information there. There's lots of good stuff. You can find me on YouTube, Patreon, Medium, Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, all Corbie Mitleid. The only place that's different is Facebook. That's Fire Through Spirit. And that's where I do my free reading hour once a month. The next one is going to be on Sunday, April 17th at 4:00 in the afternoon. Where am I going to be? Yes, I'm gradually coming out of the COVID cocoon.
Bubble.
Yeah, the COVID cocoon.
Yes.
We've all been stuck in it in one way or another. So
yeah. This Saturday, I'm going to be, it is in Syracuse. The place is called the Alien Opera House.
Oh, nice.
And there's a one-day show from 11 to 5 there. And April 16th, I will be at the Saratoga Springs, New York. It's the Saratoga City Center for the Mind, Body, Soul Expo. And that's huge. That's like, 250 booths. It's a great show.
Wonderful.
Let's see, what else? Working on the next book called The Big Reboot. That's going to be the one that follows Clean Out Your Life Closet.
Okay.
Teaching, found a fabulous 14-year-old who is going to be one of the best readers I've ever known. What she can see at 14 is what a lot of 30-year-olds miss.
So you teach tarot too?
Oh, wow.
I teach one-on-one. I don't do a lot of classes. Yes, I'm a member of the Tarot Guild, and I teach there. But I don't do actual classes because there are an awful lot of good tarot teachers out there. What I do is something like
mentorship.
Decadance.
Okay.
Now, what's that? That's where you can pick up any non-tarot based deck, and I'll have you reading it within 5 minutes.
Nice.
Because the wonderful thing about Oracle decks is there are no rules.
Yeah.
So you can drop the, am I doing it right? You can just look at the cards. You can let your subconscious read the archetypes, read the allegory, and people are amazed. And I tell them, see, you don't need to come to me with every single question. You don't need to be spending that money. You can do it yourself. We can all do what I did. That'll be on my gravestone. Y'all can do what she did. Yeah, y'all can do what she did. It's okay.
Yeah. I am working with my students right now, and we're currently in a unit 11. It's 11 units in now, and this part of the class is we're building our own Oracle deck. So when it's done, when it's finished, when it's printed, I will send you one, so you'll have another one for your collection.
Would love it.
Yeah,
it's coming along rather nicely too.
It is, and what it is I've designed the formula, the template upon which this deck will work. For the same purposes you cited, that it's, not constricted by, am I doing it right? There is no right or wrong. It's just the archetypes talking to you. And then I will draft about 10 different pieces of art. And then the class votes on which one they feel captures the essence of that archetype the best, and that's the one that becomes the official card for the deck. So it's truly a communal experience. It's a lot of fun. I think my students are getting a lot out of it, and I'd love for you to have it. So when it's finished, it'll probably be about maybe a little less than a year. Maybe it'll be out sometime early next year. I hope to have it.
Okay. Terrific. I would love to see it.
Corbie, this has been fantastic. I'd love to have you back on again to talk about your other books and your other, maybe more a mediumship next time or something like that, because you are fascinating. You are fun. The audience loves you. You have been fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. So I know you're busy. I know that, and Tuesdays are rough for you, but let me know if there's one that comes up, and we'll do a special show if need be, because I just love to have you on that much.
Sounds good to me. I love the questions that came in from the audience. People listened, and that's always a gift.
I've got a good audience for that, and they're used to intellectual conversation here, so that helps.
Pretty regular.
Yeah, that helps. Unfortunately, most people still prefer to listen on demand, so the live audience is still relatively small compared to the massive on-demand audience, but it is what it is. And it grows, and I try to encourage people, come live so that you can call in and we can interact with you. But
and that's why you have questions and comments from the ether as well.
That's why I do it. Yeah, it kind of helps to hear them.
Recurring questions. Yeah.
That's right. Well, Corbie, thank you so much. We will be back in just a moment here. Father Chris and Jamie Wolfe will be debriefing our conversation tonight and maybe taking more of your questions off topic. We'll see where it goes. We'll be back in just a moment.
to change, even if I want to realize. 'Cause I've been sitting here, same old ways, taking off without the same mistake. Darling, where you going? Won't be as simple for you. Time won't change anything if I don't know how to breathe. The good and bad pushed against the tide. Maybe once, maybe twice, turned around to save the time. Now I know how to leave the side. If I saw another day, only to scream into the night. Nothing ever tries to change, even if I want to realize. 'Cause I've been sitting here, same old ways, taking off without the same mistake. Can I leave it all behind? Follow all the leading signs. When the dark is growing and the light is closing, darling, where you going? Won't be as simple for you.
Welcome back, everyone, to the third and final part of Vestiges After Dark. We've spent the last 2 hours talking with Reverend Corbie Mitleid about tarot and her work in psychic ability and teaching people to develop a better relationship to their own spiritual center using these tools. It's been a fantastic 2 hours, hasn't it? And I see the audience really, really loved this guest. So we will make every effort to have her back on in future seasons. But now, in this third segment, we're going to debrief, talk a little bit about the subject and whatever's on your mind. Give us a call, 347-514-7150. That's 347-514-7150. Enter PIN number 376-8923 to get into the queue. I'll be right back. Divination's one of those things that's very controversial in, Christian circles. It's not just a Protestant evangelical thing either. It's very much firmly rooted in both Catholicism and Orthodoxy to prohibit this as, I guess if you look at it from the Catechism of the Catholic Church's perspective, divination is seen as resorting to occult forces to acquire information of a hidden nature when that person should be seeking God in prayer instead. That's the position. And of course, there's more to it than that. And then, of course, it has that history of being connected to the devil and everything else. But I think in the modern era, okay, in a more enlightened frame of mind, hopefully, although, when you look at the world today, you don't necessarily see a more enlightened civilization out there. But if we are to at least assume that we've grown somewhat spiritually in the last 2,000 years, or at least the last 500, one thing that can be said is psychology has given us a unique and much more developed understanding of these types of things, particularly through the lens of people like Carl Jung, who gave us an understanding of the archetypes and how these things play out in our psyche. So I'm not so sure that if modern psychology hadn't had a place in the ancient world, that wouldn't have been seen as of the devil too. What are your thoughts, Father Chris, on this? I know that, I'm sure you probably have theological as well as personal opinions on this, but I'm curious as to where do you fall in the realm of divination? I'm sure you don't probably have much use for it in your life, but I mean, are you in the camp that, it's evil, it's a cult, we need to avoid it, or are you in the camp that says it's an interesting psychological tool?
Well, I mean, first of all, I think psychology is certainly very important. So I don't think that because there are Christians who are skeptical about that.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Now, to a certain extent, we should be skeptical about all things. but no, I certainly value not only psychology, but also psychiatry, counseling. And many priests are also psychiatrists and certainly psychologists. Of all hues. I mean, I was learning today that at least two of the Serbian Orthodox priests in Australia are also psychologists. So there's nothing controversial about that. I think I have spoken in a previous show about some of my concerns about occult practices, although that was more particularly tied to use of Ouija boards. Yeah. I think.
And you have good reason for that because of your personal experience.
Yeah,
so that makes
that's
sense.
right. So there are experiences I've had that lead me to be wary of those. But I think in terms of how do I approach things like I'm more interested, actually looking at it psychologically, I'm more interested in what is it that leads people to seek out a medium, tarot card reader. And I think that it's because they're normally at threshold moments in life. So they've reached a point in life or something's happening where, they can make a decision, threshold moments. You can go one way or the other, or, multiple different ways. But in any case, they've come to the point where they can't delay making a decision any longer.
They don't know what to do.
Yeah, most of us are pretty good procrastinators. I am an amazing procrastinator. And anyone who's ever known me well will tell you how infuriated they are by me in that regard. So I think, and what people are seeking is a lens through which to analyze this threshold moment and where they might go. I suppose I would say, I don't want to question the motives of tarot card readers or people in that sphere. People are people. Some are good and some are not, and that's true of priests. So, so I don't want to make any moral judgment on people in that position. But I would say, and you did touch on it earlier on, what people are doing is measuring where they're at and the choices they could make against archetypes. So they're represented very visually in the tarot cards. I would say a more, this is applying a value judgment to it. So I won't shirk from that. But a holier way of doing that, and actually I think a way that is far more tried and tested, is to do that through the lens of the scriptures and the teachings of the church. So that so Moses is an archetype, for example. Mm-hmm. Now I also think Moses was a real person. So I'm not.
Well, yeah, but real people assume archetypal positions.
Absolutely,
I would say that Moses, Abraham, and Jesus are all the same archetype.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And they either assign them themselves in their lives or they're assigned to them beyond their lives, and so the whole death of the author principle. So, for me, I think there are similarities in what's happening when somebody approaches a tarot card reader. But certainly, when people approach me, then I'm very unlikely to give, Chris Yates 101 philosophy of life. I'm far more likely, and you've heard the way I do this on the show. I will appeal to what the church fathers have said and church mothers, what other people have said that have stood the test of time, that have lasted more than 41 yees, in my case. So, I think that traditional churches that view the revelation of God as not only here and now and ongoing, but also has been revealed in the past. We would be much. I think the reason that people in the church say don't go to tarot card readers, don't go to mediums, it's not the same. Like, they're not saying don't go and see a psychologist. And actually, our guest even touched on this. She said she's intuitive, and I think that was obvious. Yeah. She's an intuitive person and an extrovert. And intuitive extroverts are quite good at counseling people, or can be. That's an aspect of counseling. Certainly, someone like me responds to, because I'm an extrovert. So it's much better if I go and see a counselor who is an extrovert, because they can shut me up. Yeah. And sometimes that's what you need. So my approach isn't to say, oh, it's all the devil, or you're going to hell in a handcart if you go and see a tarot card reader. It's also not to say, oh, well, these people, and again, our guest was pretty good on this regard, because there is a school of thought that says, oh, they're magical, special people, and no one else can be like them. Yeah. And because actually, if you put yourself in that case, you're saying that my personal revelation is of God, and there's no debating that. There's no, and that's unhealthy. And again, in fairness, that is absolutely not what she said. Right. So, right. That's not an attack. Right. So I guess that's my view of it, is to say it's not quite the same as saying, like, with any substance or alcohol is neither good nor bad. It's how it interacts with you. I think when it comes to things like tarot, you have to ask what is it that, if I'm approaching a threshold moment, what is the most reliable way to assess what I ought to do? And for me, that would not be to go and see a tarot card reader.
Right.
But that's me, and I'm not telling other people what to do. I'm like you. I believe in freedom. I don't think we should lock them up or burn them as witches. But I think that I would much rather go and see a monk, preferably on Mount Athos if I had the means to do so. But because actually, there's a long tradition of Christian mystics, especially in monasteries, especially on Mount Athos. But I think for me, that's a far more reliable way. So it's not about me saying that, this is good, that is bad. I'm just saying what's more reliable. What would I rather stake my choice on?
Well, I think some of the difficulty and some of the challenges are also related to the fact that divination, it looks like a game to the layman. It's usually put with the game section in bookstores. If you go buy if you go to a bookstore like, I don't know what you have in Australia, but
it is in America. It's not in Britain and Australia, though.
Is it really? That's interesting. I figured it'd be different.
It amazed me that they sold Ouija boards at Toys R Us in America. I was like, that never happened in Britain.
The Ouija boards are
never.
Any toy store, any store that has board games, there'll be a Ouija board there too. The bookstores have them as well.
It's amazing the cultural differences, isn't it?
It is.
When we talk about nakedness,
we got kicked off Daily Motion for that one. Did you know that? We got kicked off Daily Motion for that episode.
Yeah, I saw that. That's absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, they didn't explain why either. They just said you violated our terms of service and your account is now permanently suspended. And I said, well, thank you for doing me a favor because I don't want to do business with people that don't communicate like human beings and tell me what's wrong so I can fix it. I mean, if we're in a relationship here,
they didn't listen to it. They just took, somebody would have complained and they've just taken it down.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And I don't want to do business with an organization that does that. So goodbye, Daily Motion. You can kiss my ass, is my opinion. But no, back to the tarot cards. Now, in US, we have a bookstore called Barnes and Noble. I don't think you have them in Australia.
No, but I have bought Thomas Sowell books from them online.
Okay, so there you go.
Okay, they exist.
There you go. So we used to have two major ones. It was Borders and Barnes and Noble. Borders went out of business. I think though there's like some locations in the Middle East that are still in existence. They've been like I don't know. It was some special arrangement that allowed them to continue in a limited way, but Barnes and Noble is now the only dominant bookstore of its kind in the US. And when you go to the New Age or metaphysical section, it's usually right there next to the games. And I don't think that's by accident because I think that's how people see it as like, this is the fun stuff. This is fun stuff you can do, cards and playing cards. Again, people, when you think of a deck of cards, most people are thinking gambling in Las Vegas or playing poker or bridge or something. They're not thinking.
Oh, no, but they're all the same origin. I know that.
Same origin.
Yeah.
So, yes, there's a game playing element there that is sort of part of the whole thing. Now, what I find interesting, though, is that what that does is it creates a understanding with the layperson that you can just learn it like you learn a game. You just read the rules and then now you can play the game. And that's not how divination works. Divination is a skill that one cultivates from within. It's not through the deck. The deck doesn't do anything. All the deck really does is gives you a way to tangibly express through the laws of what Carl Jung would have called synchronicity, which seems to be some kind of metaphysical rule or law that is not really understood very well. I mean, I think the layperson might call it the butterfly effect. You might have heard of the butterfly effect, right? It's kind of on the same principle, but a little bit different in the sense that in synchronicity, what Carl Jung recognized were what he called meaningful coincidences. In other words, there were things that happened meaninglessly, but there seemed to be combinations of meanings that express themselves in two unrelated events. Even though there was no ultimate meaning to it, it just happens. And it sort of like seems to be something that happens metaphysically, and tarot can exploit that law in the sense that, for example, the quality of time has a certain energy signature. Every moment, every second, every minute, every month, every year, whatever you're classifying as the thing that it is, it has an energy signature attached to it. And that signature, in any way that you interact with it, is going to send out that signature across every direction that it can reach. And therefore, if you're interacting with a particular signature and shuffling a deck of cards at the same time, a seemingly random activity, those cards are falling into place according to the signature of the thing you're interacting with, which is why.
But also psychologically speaking, though, it to a certain extent, it doesn't matter how cards are put down. The card reader is engaging in a process of finding meaning.
Yes.
And so now, I hesitate to say this, but I think it'll be okay. My sister, who watches this show often in retrospect, because she lives in a different time zone, but
it's okay, Father. Most people watch this show in retrospect. We have a massive. I mean, it's in the thousands of people that watch it on demand, but live it's usually just about 40 people.
But my hesitation is because my sister was a tarot card reader. Uh-huh. And for a long time.
Oh, really?
And so,
that's interesting.
Yeah, it's not like tarot cards are unknown to me.
Yeah.
And she's a good person. Okay. Now she doesn't do them anymore. She moved to a Catholic country, and somebody said, "You don't do that." And so
that's a no-no.
Now I'm actually quite glad she stopped. But I don't need to get into that now.
Right.
But my sister is very intuitive and sensitive and kind and has a great heart.
Mm-hmm.
So I can imagine that anybody that went to see her would value that experience. Because there's another side of this, which is that it's a bit like when people pay to go and see a shrink, right?
Right.
Someone actually will listen to you.
Right.
Right.
Right. And often a lot of people in life have nobody to talk to. They live on their own for all sorts of different reasons, some good, some not, some indifferent. And somebody will listen to them. And if that somebody is a kind person with a good heart, they're likely actually to pick up intuitively deep truths about another person.
Right.
I like to think that I can do that, although I don't think I do it as well as my sister.
Right.
And so, and in fact, I'm going to be really controversial now and suggest that I think women are better at it, generally speaking, than men. I'm not, generally speaking. And I think there's good reasons for that, actually. And I think actually that's been revealed in the scriptures as well.
Oh,
but
yeah.
anyway,
No question about it.
leave it to one side.
Yeah.
And so look, I'm not doubting the sort of descriptor that you give about synchronicity, about energies and all of that. But I think to a large extent, the cards are kind of incidental.
Oh, I think they eventually do come to that. However, that being said, there are moments where, like, for example, there was a time way back where I was in a relationship and it was not working out, and I knew it wasn't working out. But I had my intuition was saying, this is going to need to end soon. And so I pulled cards on it. I pulled cards, and the outcome card was the Tower, which, pretty much means this is ending. And it did. It ended, and I was the one that ended it. So one could say, was it my intuition just reflecting itself? Was it me seeing the card that was the catalyst for me to go and say, okay, now I'm ending it, because now I felt like I could give myself permission to do so? I mean, there's a lot of factors psychologically that play into this.
Kind of like a little reassurance.
Yes. And I think all of it's valid. I think there is a metaphysical component. I do. I think there's a spiritual component. I do. But I also think there's a very large there's a very large psychological component as well.
Well,
that's very practical.
And also, if you think about it, what this is me kind of describing the usefulness of things like tarot cards, by the way. It invites a conversation that's difficult to have with people normally.
Right.
People will talk to their shrink about things they won't talk to their family about, and in a way, the arrangement of going to see somebody for a reading is actually saying, I'm actually going to come here and talk about things that are not normally talked about.
Right.
And the cards give a kind of, it's easier to talk about a picture. It's a bit like art therapy, isn't it? Like in art therapy, people will draw something or paint something, whilst reflecting on something. Then they can talk about the painting. They can talk about the artwork, which is an indirect way of talking about their own psyche.
Yeah.
But it's a more comfortable way of doing it because you're talking about a painting, not me. And so I can see the kind of cognitive usefulness of having that sort of model. And again, I think that to look for similarities, I think we do that in Lectio Divina. When we read this, like, we'll meditate on a gospel passage, place ourselves in the scene.
Or how many times does the gospel end up speaking directly to something that's a problem in your life? Like when you're doing, you might be having an issue and then you go and you do the divine office, and then it just so happens to be the reading that day.
And I guess that is exactly what I was saying earlier on.
Yeah.
Which is again, I'm not asking for credulity of people, even if you're an atheist. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
The reason that the scriptures have survived the way they have is because they speak the language of humanity.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so, this is Jordan Peterson's whole shtick, by the way.
Yes.
Is to say, leave your beliefs to one side. The Bible has to be contended with, because it's been generated and survived thousands of years. Because in fact, it speaks to things that are there's no coincidence that it chimes with your life when you read this passage. There's not a coincidence.
It's not at all.
One hell of a lecture on the Bible for a man whose faith is kind of in question. I think he's really come a long way.
Yeah, sure, but. And that's why I said about I knew a priest. He's still alive. He's old. And he's a lovely bloke.
You just can't dismiss the Bible no matter who you are.
Well, and he once said to me, who are you reading in theology? And I said, X, Y, Z. And he said, I try not to read anyone more than 150 years present, because we need to know whether it's going to stand the test of time for us before we start listening to him.
It's good advice. It really is.
It is. Yeah. That's not to say you shouldn't read contemporary theologians, because who knows, I might want to write a book as well, and you should definitely buy that. But I
will buy your book, Father. Hey, calling in on the Skype line is Laura. Hello, Laura. You're on the air.
Hi, guys. Oh, my gosh. How exciting.
I'm sorry, Laura, not Laura, Lara. I'm sorry.
Laura from Perth.
Yes.
Laura.
Yes.
Western Australia, yes. We listen to you out here.
Fantastic.
Awesome.
So, how is everyone?
We are having a fantastic time, a blast tonight. I hope you've enjoyed the show so far.
Yeah, this was a good show.
Are you
going to reach out to Corbie, Miss Lara?
Yes, I am. I just checked her internet. So, yeah, fantastic. I loved her.
Make sure you mention this show. Make sure that you heard her on Vestiges, so she'll know that you were, in the audience that night, because I do think she was reading the chat, and she'll probably remember So she should remember you, is what my point is.
Oh, definitely. I will make sure I mention the show. But no, thank you, guys. You guys are outstanding.
Thank you.
Brilliant.
I appreciate it. Yes.
Thank you for tuning in.
Well, it's nice to hear an Australian accent on the show. I always feel like a fraud, but I am in fact Australian, and I do live here.
We can tell by the sunshine. The sunshine testifies to your location.
Well, Laura's from Western Australia, which is very much a different country.
Oh, really? Yes.
So,
yes.
We call it the Little China. Little China.
Well, I bet the food's very good.
It is.
They got plenty of South African food there too, bobotie and biltong.
Wonderful.
Lots of South Africans in Perth.
So, Laura, do you have a question or comment for us tonight?
Yes, just a quick question.
Sure.
Can a human being make an actual deal with the devil or a bad spirit or a soul taker?
Okay. Can a person make a deal with the devil? Yes. Can a person sell their soul to the devil? Absolutely not. That is a absolute lie. Your soul is not yours to sell. It doesn't belong
to either you or the devil.
That's right. So it's a scam. It's one of the devil's scam to make us think that this is something that can be done. I have a lot of clients that think, oh, I sold my soul to the devil when I was a teenager, and now my life's all messed up, and I need someone to help me get it back. You never lost it. You've just been, duped into thinking you did. But making deals with the devil, you can do that. Yes, absolutely. All you have to simply, do is tell him, whatever.
It's the devil that says it's eternal and can't be undone. He doesn't want to lose you.
Yeah, exactly. It's a lie.
And the truth is that the devil can't be forgiven by God, and because his disobedience was total, because he knew
eternal.
God. Yeah. But we can always be forgiven. We can always undo such an agreement. We can always be restored. It's the devil that tells us we can't be.
Right.
Because not much is mentioned about him. The devil.
No, because he's not that important. The devil's really.
Laura, are you saying that not much is mentioned in the scriptures, or just that in this day and age, or for the last 50 years, not much has been said?
In this day and age.
I agree with you. That's actually been one of the devil's victory. Well, he never has true victories. That's one of his hollow victories. Is that there's that great quote from the Venerable Fulton Sheen, my great hero, American bishop, and I won't get it right, but it's something like, the devil's been circulating news of his death for years, and it suits him very well that most people believe that, and so, and I don't know which church you go to, if you go to one, but you're unlikely to hear.
Oh, okay, I'm Roman Catholic.
Yeah, right.
Don't hate me.
Even where you are, you're
no, we don't hate you. I love Roman Catholics. It's the Roman Catholic Church that doesn't like me. It's
one-sided relationship.
Well, they quite like me, so it must be you.
It's definitely me.
I'm joking.
It's definitely me.
But,
honestly, Bishop Bryan, I love you. You're brilliant. You've got a great mind.
I appreciate that.
I love you all, really. You've all got great minds. I'm so grateful that you answered my call.
I thank you for calling in.
The church has been very bad at preaching on hell and the devil. And it's been partly an overreaction to people complaining about them doing it too much in the early part of the 20th century. But it's done a disservice. And that's why actually people reach out to exorcists outside of mainstream Roman Catholicism, because they can't find anybody within it because they've stopped talking about it.
Yeah.
So many of our clients, that's the story. Is I can't go to my church, I can't go to my pastor because we don't believe in this stuff.
Yeah, they don't believe it.
Yeah,
and they'll just think I'm crazy, and I'll be ostracized.
But the other side of the coin is, I do feel though that in circles where the devil is communicated, too much importance is put on him. That's the other side of the coin.
Yes,
so many people think he's God's equal. No, he was created by God. We are not
dualists. Okay, we are not. This is not Zoroastrianism.
But God is have clients all the time.
Yeah, the devil's not in competition for God.
You do know he ain't in charge of nothing.
The devil's terrified of us. That's the truth.
Right.
He's terrified of us because the devil always acts out of fear and hatred.
He's been robbed of his power.
Yeah. And actually,
God, thank you.
All the great mystics of the Orthodox world will say how terrified he is of the Blessed Virgin Mary.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yes.
Shrinks from her. And so, whenever you ask the Theotokos for help, she does. And her son listens to her. So, that's strong advice.
Well, Laura, thank you so much for calling in with your question.
Thanks,
please do it again.
Great to hear your
again.
Voice, Laura.
Yeah, great to hear you.
Yeah, thank you for answering.
Thank you.
Brilliant.
Take care, hon.
Yeah, that's a good question. I know that I think your friend was trying to call in there, Father Chris. So perhaps maybe
Father Wolfe.
Yes. So perhaps he can give it a try now, and it might go through if he's still listening. And we'll take him on the air. But I mean, that's the thing, that I think that there is some value in the sense that we've gotten a little bit away from the devil. Because I think there was way too much emphasis for the first 1,500 years of Christianity. But at the same time, we do need to have an understanding that this is a concept. This is a real thing that must be contended with. And we need to know how to navigate that spiritually. And if we don't talk about it, then we're not going to have the tools we need to be able to do that. Okay, calling in now from the Skype line is Father Walter. Hello, you're on the air.
Can you hear me?
We
can hear you just fine.
Hey, Father.
Perfect. I didn't make the mistake of last time. I've muted the YouTube, so I didn't have the 30-second odd delay between the Skype call and the live airtime.
Absolutely. That will drive you crazy trying to hear both.
I always find conversations around the supernatural, particularly devils and demonology, really intriguing. After all, if you think about the 60s, 70s, all the horror sort of movies, shows, the genre was all built around the devil coming back, or the devil's child.
Yeah.
And then you hit that wonderful moment where everyone's like, "Oh, the devil's not that great," or he doesn't give the fear that had been built into these movies or novels, and everyone kind of moved on and
moved on to vampires,
about demons, because what they've done is that to create the hype for the genre, you have to give more power to these bad forces, or these evil forces, or malicious forces than they actually have, because we know that they can't do half the things or 3/4 of things that the movie
needs them to do for dramatic effect.
But they can impress us with their intellect, though, can't they? Because their intellect is beyond ours.
That's about the only thing they got going for them.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, not beyond yours, Father Walter. You're a very learned man. But nevertheless, they have angelic minds, and so they are smarter than us, and that's why they can trick us.
But you put somebody like one of us in a room with people who engage with these demons or demoniacs, and very quickly their little spirit friends seem to either disappear or get very upset. They don't want to engage with us, because we aren't stupid, or we know actually that they are little. They're not some great and powerful being that's actually able to help or assist.
No, they often try and hide from us. That's why sometimes
almost every single time.
Movies,
sometimes it's hard to draw them out.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hammed up in the movies, but you do in fact have to provoke them.
You do.
And if you look at the liturgy of the rite of exorcism itself, which actually you shouldn't.
If you could hold that thought, because you just brought up something that I was saving as a question from the ether for later in the season, or on another show, but it applies right now, so I'm going to talk about it. I don't have it up on my screen, but I can paraphrase it fairly well. And somebody said it was in one of our past streams, it was in the comments, and the person said, if you've got the power of Christ as an exorcist, why do you need to go? Jesus just said, commanded them to leave and they left. Why do you need to go through this 2-hour ritual? And it's a good question, because I think it relates very well to what you just said, is that there needs to be a provocation. I mean, we operate in persona Christi as priests and bishops and as clergy, but we aren't Jesus. And the relationship is slightly different between exorcist and demon versus Jesus himself and demon.
Well, it was even with the apostles.
That's right.
You know, I mean, remember they said, "Oh, we tried and we couldn't cast this demon out."
Exactly.
And, well, this one's tricky.
Yes.
It takes it takes fasting and prayer.
Yes.
You know, this one.
Yes.
So yeah, it's yeah. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No. You said it perfectly. That's where I'm going with it. There is provocation to draw it out, provocation to weaken it, provocation to make it accessible and submissive to the power of Christ that works through us. But we aren't Jesus in the flesh. So it is different. It is operating sort of by proxy in a way, but we are facilitators of the grace, but we aren't the source of the grace. So, you know, it's going to, obviously, Jesus is going to be a little bit more expeditious.
I remember an episode, actually, of Ghost Adventures. Was it in Erie? I can't remember.
The first one?
Horseshoe?
The horseshoe?
No, well, where you gave somebody holy water but didn't tell them.
Oh, that was Ogden.
Possession.
That was
Ogden. It was Ogden.
Yeah.
Which is it's a good tactic.
It is.
It really is. Because
it worked.
Yeah, it definitely worked on that. I could see.
Shit went downhill after that.
It did.
Yeah, but but that's what it needed. Now that is a provocation.
It was good validation.
No doubt about it.
Yeah.
So what we mean. So I ought to clarify what we mean by provocation. We don't mean we go in and
the Zach Bagans, start swearing at it.
Yeah. Not that. No.
I've been known to do that.
I mean, provocation is actually first and foremost the presence of an exorcist, because the devil knows who you are,
right?
Or at least the presence of an ordained person, because the devil knows they have a protection that's not easily breached, and so. If it can be at all, actually, I mean, that's where The Exorcist, the movie, does fall down.
Yes,
the Exorcist jumps out the window to his death. No, that doesn't happen.
No, that wouldn't happen.
And so
I'd consider that a failure. And the whole thing. I mean, take me, damn it, take me. I mean, no, that's not what you do.
That's cooperating with evil. No,
right.
Yeah.
So anyway, but leaving that to one side. But the provocation we're talking about, although actually, I mean, I will, as an aside. Gabriel Amor, the great Vatican exorcist, before every exorcism used to do that at the devil. Now that was actually.
Did he really?
Two things. Seriously.
He was goofy.
He talks about it. He's hilarious. He's a hilarious guy, Gabriel Amor. Yeah. Joyful man. And he did it for two reasons. Number one, to say, you're beneath me, devil, but also. He would often do it with people praying around to say, we don't need to be afraid of this. It was actually to kind of break the tension of saying, this is a normal thing we're doing.
Yes.
But I'm not generally talking about that kind of provocation. I'm talking about, the presence of an ordained person, especially an exorcist, who has the ritual with him, who has holy oils, who has holy water, who can make the sign of the cross, who, might even have the Blessed Sacrament, although being very careful how that's used, of course.
Of course.
These are the provocations we're talking about. We're not talking about, swearing at him. Yeah.
I think also coming from an assistant's point of view, when I've done solemns with Bishop Bryan, when he starts the rite, it's like charging me up. Like he'll start to really get into his rhythm, and I can actually feel the Holy Spirit coming down. I get chills all over me. I feel strong. I feel like I could, throw a car. It gives me that confidence and that strength as he's reading to face whatever we're going to be facing. And I get really keyed up through the rites. So I think that could be part of it too, is it gives us confidence and strength through the whole thing, because the further he goes in, I'm ready to chew.
Well, it reminds us, in whose name we're operating.
Right.
And more than that, I think, because the devil lies and the devil tempts, that actually you don't, yes, you see these kind of movies where, every exorcist is obviously an Aramaic Keeney Greek and Latin scholar, you know, like you think, oh my God, you should be earning a fortune,
right?
You know,
yeah.
So no, we're not all those things. I mean, I know a bit of Latin, you know, but you know, I can say mass in Latin, you know, but I'm not going to write a biography in Latin, you know. But actually, although those things are useful and God-given gifts and would be great in going into battle against the enemy, actually. Knowing Lord Jesus Christ have mercy upon me, a sinner, is sufficient.
Oh yeah, it is.
Knowing Jesus,
it's a powerful exorcism right there. Yeah.
Knowing for God so loved the world that He gave His only.
I say that to prep for meditation. Sorry to interrupt you, Father Firth. Go ahead.
Yeah, carry on.
Well, I think one of the big things about anything involving ritual or prayer is that it's intentional. So you actually stop being, well, in my case, a Walter. You stop being Chris, and you stop being Bryan, and we become the office. You know, we are our office, not the individual. So,
right.
So we actually move beyond our own ego to filling the role of a servant of Christ in those moments. And I think the longer some of that ritual and preparation is, the more we're letting go of ourselves to give more room for God to work.
Well, that is such an important point. Again, my goodness, yes, that is so true.
Well, again, Fulton Sheen used to call us ambassadors for Christ. You know, an ambassador actually has the authority of the one that sent them. Mm-hmm. You know, the U.S. ambassador to the Ukraine has the president's authority in the Ukraine.
Right.
And so, you know, so it's not that we're facsimiles of Jesus; it's that we actually carry His authority.
Right, that's the difference. And I love what Father Walter you just said, because it is extremely correct. It does help connect us. If we're talking archetypes, for example, it helps us to connect with the power of that archetype to be able to facilitate the action that's required in that situation. One of the things that I like the most about the solemn rite of exorcism is that there's a moment where it's not in the rubric or anything. It's just something I've learned to do through experience. Is that I will grab the head of the victim, and I will force that demon to look at me through that victim's eyes, because there's a moment where it's no longer that the victim's eyes looking at you. The eyes change, and they will literally, the pupils will turn to the appearance of a reptile or a snake. And when the demon is forced into such submission that it has to look at you in the eye, that's when you know you've won. That's when you know you've beaten it. Because that's the one thing it never wants to do, is it does not want to be seen. It does not want to be recognized for what it is, because that's when the scam is up. You know, it's all a scam anyway.
Well, it's when it becomes bathed in light.
Yes.
And they're creatures of the dark. Yes. They can't cope with it.
They can't cope with it.
Because the light comes from God. And so, you know, there is that sort of sense of, you know, the uncreated light is made manifest, and it's unbearable.
I actually had that happen to me with Tori in what episode was that, Bishop? Biggs.
That was the last one we did.
And you were finishing the rite, and I grabbed him and I said, "Do you know who I am, or do you know who you are, or whatever?" And I was looking straight into his eyes, and I saw nothing but literal hate staring back at me. And then it was almost like a veil was lifted, and it's gone. And it was him.
Yeah, and that's where you know you've got
probably one of the most powerful. I'm getting chills remembering it.
Yeah.
And that's what it was like. Yeah, we got this.
Yeah. That was such an obvious possession, because that guy was so meek. Like, he was a nice dude, I could tell.
He was just a good old boy.
Nice old
his
boy.
Wife got me, man. Miss Gloria. Oh my God. She was just horrified by what she was seeing her husband go through.
See, that's the thing that
when we got done.
That's the thing that pains me, you know, because I actually have a lot of mixed feelings about having been on television. Because my motivation with doing it originally was because I wanted, my goal I've always seen as my role in this is to destigmatize spiritual problems, to let people know that there is help out there. There's people that know what to do to be able to facilitate the kinds of things you need in order to get well. And I wanted that to be out there. Because you get these shows like Ghost Adventures, but they're showing you only the darkness. So when they gave me an opportunity to show that there is a solution here, and they're giving me the chance to come on and effectuate that solution, I jumped at the chance, and I thought that that's a great thing. What I did not fully, I guess, prepare for is that you would always have, and I knew this, it's just I wasn't really making the connection, because it's a television show. People think it's scripted, and they think that this is all just fake, where either I'm an actor or either, it's a setup and the wool's being pulled over my eyes so that I believe it. But what they don't see is everything that happens off camera, where you see the reality and humanity of these people. You see the desperate situation they're in. And even though, yes, Zach's dramatic, and sometimes the show can be extremely melodramatic at times, when we have done these shows with the Ghost Adventures crew, it's very, very solemn and serious. They take this work very seriously, and the clients are absolutely 100% real. And, we've tried to do some good for them. It's hard, though, when you're only there for a few hours to be able to.
It never takes long. As soon as we walk in the door, especially with Bishop, it's usually within 20 minutes, shit goes to hell anyway.
Yeah.
So,
and it has to be said that, I really want the listeners to pay attention to this, that deliverance ministry is in a sense a sort of reset. It's not the answer to the rest of your life.
Right.
Again,
into that.
Jesus talked about, they cast them out, but then leave the place empty. Mm-hmm. And then, it comes back and it's
with some of his friends.
Worse. Yeah. And so, the whole point of and also it suggests why God allows this. In fact, it's explicitly told in the scriptures. God allows the devil to tempt us, so that we can return to him. And so it's not a sign of curse. It's a sign of, it's an opportunity rather to deepen our faith. And, but it has to be said, so many people who experience the miracle of deliverance ministry then don't go to church afterwards.
No, they don't.
It's like, and you think, well, how much more do you need to know? Do you need to experience to know that actually the way you're supposed to live your life is
well, I try to tell them, look, you're going to, once we've been successful here, after we've effectuated release and you're released from this thing, you're going to start feeling a whole lot better. But that's when it's the most dangerous.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you start feeling better, you're going to think that, I can just go back to the lifestyle that led to this in the first place.
And it's why we actually, I know that you do too. We have preconditions before we'll actually engage in that ministry with somebody.
Yes.
One is that they must be baptized.
Yes.
And secondly is that they must be making a commitment. I mean, in the Western tradition, exorcism is really an extension of the sacrament of reconciliation, of penance.
It is.
Which is why, I'm not saying that's necessarily correct. I'm just saying that it is.
Yes.
But I think that's been overemphasized in the past, which means no one's ever talked about exorcisms, which is a silly thing. But it is nevertheless has to be connected to confession.
Oh, because, yeah. I have seen, Father, demons lose their grip during reconciliation. I've been thinking where we're getting prepared for having to set up an exorcism at some point, usually a minor one. But, I hear the confession first, and then the confession is what fixes it. It's done.
Yeah, well,
because that is a sacrament.
Yes.
But in particular,
yes,
big old dude, and he wanted me in there as kind of a comfort for him. After confession was over, we were done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
that's a sacrament.
Yeah,
broke down like a baby too. Yeah, he broke down like a baby.
Yeah, reconciliation is far more powerful. Well, I just want to say thank you to Jamie Wolfe and Father Chris and Father Walter. Thank you so much. It's been a wonderful evening, hasn't it?
Yeah, this is great. This is a great one. Yeah.
Great time. Thanks, Lara. Thanks, Australia.
Yes, and thanks to our guest, Reverend Corbie, for being with us.
Oh, she was outstanding.
Yeah, we'll have her back on.
Yeah.
Next week, Vestiges After Dark goes dark because we're going to be on a different show. Strange Oddities will be airing on Wednesday the 30th at 8 p.m. on YouTube. I'll be putting out notices so that you can find it. But if you type in Strange Oddities in Google, you'll find us. And that's on Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern time. So we're not going to have Vestiges. We're going to do that show instead. And then we'll return the following week talking about dreams. Until then, I'll see you out there in the ether. Good night, everybody. God bless.